Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. If you choose, please stand for the pledge and remain standing. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. We have Pastor Bobby Brewer from Reigning Grace. Hi.
Thank you. Hey, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for our town council, Lord. Thank you for the sacrifice they've made to family and careers to serve our town. And Lord, we thank you for the freedoms we have here in the United States to assemble. And we pray that you bless tonight's council. We pray for wisdom and guidance for our town and its leadership, Lord. And Lord, we thank you for these stellar students, Lord. Bless them, Lord, as they continue in their academic studies, Lord, and take care of them and bless them, Lord. Lord, we pray for our first responders and our police officers who defend our town, and we pray that you defend and protect our town with your holy angels. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Here. Councilmember Friedel. Present. Councilmember Grzybowski.
Present.
Councilmember Calavianakis.
Here.
Councilmember Toth. Here. Councilmember Skillicorn.
Here.
Anyone wishing to address the council regarding items listed on the agenda or under call to the public should fill out a request to comment card located in the back of the council chambers and hand it to the town clerk prior to consideration of that agenda item. When your name is called, please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, and state your name for the public record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is the policy of the mayor and council to not comment on items brought forth under call to the public. However, staff can be directed to report back to the council at a future date or to schedule items raised for a future council agenda.
Thank you so much. Our first item, as always, are our reports from our manager, council, and Rachel, did you have anything, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have 2 updates tonight. Both are centered around community feedback we've had throughout the weekend. I think many of you were part of an email exchange regarding a discussion surrounded by 5G, the 5G and telecommunications concerns and discussion and public input. So I did want to share that since throughout the week we've been talking with Aaron. As many of you know, we have retained outside counsel. We have retained guidance, another attorney that is based here in Arizona that is familiar with both federal and state guidelines when it comes to telecommunications. So we are working with them to help develop and strengthen our ordinances here in Fountain Hills. So there will be a work session held on June 6th before our standard council meeting that evening, or I should say that afternoon, so that we can begin discussing this and taking action. So I wanted you guys to be aware that will be scheduled. Secondly, the next conversation is around a community concern with a homeless encampment that has been quite a big topic of conversation. So at this time, I would like to ask Captain Kratzer to come forward to share some details about how MCSO has been addressing this.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. So yeah, to the town manager's point, MCSO was made aware of a shelter that was up on state trust land about a quarter mile north of the middle school near McDowell Mountain Road. In the 4.5 years that I've worked here, we've not dealt with issues on state trust land in terms of who the entity is that has the responsibility for issues such as that, where there might be a makeshift shelter in that location. Excuse me. With that being said, when that was brought to our attention, we had deputies identify the location, make sure that there was a location up there that was being used as a shelter. We did identify an area with the help of some emails or feedback from residents of where it was located. We were able to find it. I then reached out to the state land department, who is the entity who is responsible for state trust land. And with that, the state land department provided me with the guidance of of how those situations are dealt with, where there is somebody who potentially is remaining on state trust land who shouldn't be there. That process included filling out a form online. We provided some photos, some aerial photos, some GPS coordinates, and then whatever miscellaneous information we knew about the shelter and or the subject who was living in the area. We were told to submit that, and that the state land department had officials who would respond to those forms, go out to the location, check the location, contact any individuals. You are allowed to camp on state trust land for a period of time with a permit. It's very short in the year period. It's only 14 days total within the year. So there are some protocols in place where the state land department verifies that somebody who is out on state trust land does or doesn't have that permit, and if they do they outstay it, or are they valid to be there? So that was a process laid out to us, that they would handle that, and that at some point in time, they would make an evaluation of the area, and if the individual's there, tell the person to leave or trespass them if they outstayed their permit or had no permit. And then they would either put up signage that was appropriate in the area, if it was an area that was likely to be heavy trafficked area where other potential shelters might pop up. And so we followed that protocol. We did have some concerns from residents about whether or not MCSO could go up there and enforce the trespassing without going through the process of the state land department. It was told to us that that process could be a lengthy process. It might not be immediate. There was really no time frame given, but it was conveyed to us that may not be an immediate response by the state land department. I think to the point I've already made is there was a lot of requests for MCSO to go up there and locate the subject and trespass him and or arrest the subject, and just trying to navigate through the process that's been put in place with the state land department, who is the entity who does have the authority of the land. We followed the protocol that they themselves outlined for us. I was informed today before the council meeting, probably about 45 minutes ago, that I got a call from an official who did go out to the shelter that was there near the middle school. They did provide notification on the shelter that the subject has to vacate the land in the area within 72 hours or would be subject to being charged and or arrested by local law enforcement. So the state land department officials, they do not have arrest powers, so they do rely on local law enforcement for the enforcement of certain rules. I did verify with the official who called me that that was the proper procedures that we followed, and they confirmed that that was the proper process, that there is a vetting process that they first must do to establish that the person is indeed trespassing. They did that. The subject was not there, but they did provide the notifications, and within 72 hours of the notification, we are partnering with the state land department to go back out to the shelter after 72 hours, make sure it's been vacated. The instructions were also that they must clear the area of personal property. In their experience, there's a lot of property that gets left behind because shelters can sometimes become large and full of debris. The state land department official told me after 72 hours, we will communicate with them. If the subject's there, we'll charge, cite, and or arrest the subject. If there is property left beyond the 72 hours, the state land department is the entity responsible for clearing that out, and they gave me their word that we would contact them, they would come and work on clearing it out. The official also stated that what they would do is erect a few signs off McDowell Mountain Road. There's a couple of walking trails that kind of lead to that, back to that area. There's a wash and then a walking trail or two. And he said that they'll erect a couple of no trespassing signs that would then provide local law enforcement that ability to make an arrest should there be a future trespassing in the area. Arizona revised statute for trespassing does have the culpable mental state of knowing, so you got to prove that the individual knew or should have known that the area they're on was state trust land and they were not allowed to be there. It is important to note the parcel of land that this was on. Even the state land department questioned whether or not it was private property there for a short time. It was sold to a private investor some years ago, and they had to look and double check that it was indeed state trust land. And what it looked like occurred is that the deed still does show that it's private property, but the private investor defaulted on the land and it went back to state trust land. So that does create additional hurdles if it's private property. State trust land, the state land department doesn't have the authority of that, and we would have had to find the owner, the investor group that had it, that we would then have to say if they wanted the individual there or not, and then remove the individual. So that's the update on that. I'd be happy if there's questions from the council to answer what I can answer at this time. And just knowing that the plan is to follow up in 72 hours, ensure that the individual is no longer residing there, and then get the land cleared.
Thanks, Captain. I appreciate the update.
Actually, I do have a question.
I was going to say, I don't know, Aaron, the extent of questions here.
Yeah, I will have to keep them limited because it's supposed to be reports to the manager, but to the extent there's a question or two.
This has been quite an issue in our town, between the homeless encampment, which is, I think, around a quarter of a mile from our schools, and then there's also a homeless gentleman that was on the bicycle lane right next to our schools. So I've gotten quite a few emails and texts, and quite a lot of concern. I did reach out to State Senator John Kavanaugh. He said he spoke to the head of the State Land Department, Commissioner Robin Said, who told him that the town can enforce laws on state trust land without needing permission from the State Land Department. This is based on an opinion from the State Attorney General issued in the early 2000s during the Governor Janet Napolitano's term. People can only camp there with a permit, and they don't believe that a permit was issued for this particular encampment. And so basically, I think you just check and see if they have a permit, and if they do, it's okay. If they don't, then they can be, they're trespassers. Even if the camping is only for a short period of time, so according to the head of the State Land Trust Department, so I think we do have the authority to go onto the state trust land and enforce the law without going through the administrative procedure that you did, which I appreciate that, by the way, following up with that. But we might want to check up with John Kavanaugh and maybe get more guidance on this issue.
Councilmember Calavianakis, thank you for that. I don't disagree for a minute that MCSO and local law enforcement can enforce laws on state trust land. If there was a domestic violence on the land, if there was an assault, if there was a homicide, the State Land Department doesn't have law enforcement that's going to be able to go up there and investigate that. We would be the entity in town jurisdiction to go up there and investigate those crimes. When it comes to a trespassing and something that has a little bit more red tape involved in terms of them vetting the process and speaking with their department for guidance on this, because we haven't dealt with it, that was an approach that we believed was the most practical approach. And I understand the concerns that were raised with the subject being by the school. But we just have to ensure that we're treating everybody with the level of basically respecting the constitutional rights of everyone, and we'd rather err on the side of caution. And I understand the argument about the individual being close to the school, but with the State Land Department laying out that process and telling us that they needed to vet the process to make sure the subject was not there with some sort of ability to be there, that's the approach we took, and that was the guidance we were given. And I would stand by that if we had to do it in the future, and if we need to look into some additional conversation. But again, just to that point, I don't disagree that MCSO and local law enforcement can enforce laws on state trust land, but when it came to this issue with some things that had to be vetted, I think that was the approach that was addressed based on the guidance from the State Land Department.
Yeah, thank you. Aaron, I'm going to just say that before we get too far, that this item will be on an agenda in June, because it's not just the state trust land, but it's just everything in general, all the laws and all the restrictions and all the constitutional rights and all of those things. So we'll get all the information together, and I think that's part of what Rachel is going to wrap up with. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you have any other subjects, Rachel?
If I can share something on a positive note, I know those were two, again, heavy topics. we're going to be celebrating Earth Day here in our community, and there's a number of projects over on display at our community center. I had a chance to go over there today, and the recycled art project looks wonderful, and I would encourage our community to take a look. Thank you.
I have no report this week, Mayor. Thank you.
Let's see, in the past 2 weeks, I feel like we just met a couple of days ago, but the past 2 weeks since our last regular meeting, we had one league legislative update call that I attended. The Phoenix East Valley Critical Infrastructure and Transportation Committee also met. And last week, our Economic Development Strategy Workshop, and I gotta say, the economic development people put on a great example of a way to communicate with the public and how to get our feedback. I thought it was fantastic. And it's also Stellar Student Day, which you guys all know by now is my favorite day of the month. And while the mayor is going to tell you after Stellar Student portion is over, you can leave, I'm going to suggest you don't, because this is such a great opportunity for you guys to see how the town runs, how we work together, how the public has the ability to comment. It's kind of nerdy cool, so if you're into that kind of thing, ask mom and dad if you can postpone dinner for a couple of hours. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I had the privilege of attending a ceremony of life for Phil Yen, Purple Heart recipient. Big volunteer in this town, and I just want to say, Rachel, the community center looked great, and thank you for turning the fountain purple in honor of him. So he'll be duly missed, but we celebrate him any way we can. I also attended the economic summit that Amanda put on. Good job, Amanda. I appreciate that. We also had a budget workshop. That's the meeting you were talking about, that we attended. And I also attended the school board meeting last week, and I see a lot of able-bodied men out there. So they're having a painting party at the school on the 29th of April. So let's get everybody out there to help them get these rooms painted. Thank you, Mayor.
I just wanted to remind everybody that on Thursday night, we're going to have the CARES Forum here at 6:30 in the community center. We're going to be talking about teen mental health and how social media affects them. And the two teens, high school teens that won the annual essay contest award for the local drug coalition are going to be sharing their essays, and they are really fantastic. They're worth listening to. They are so heartfelt. So we hope we see a lot of you at Thursday night's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Yeah, another busy couple of weeks. I did also attend the Phil Yen Celebration of Life ceremony. It was really beautiful. He was, if you didn't know him, he was born in China. He immigrated here. He was a veteran. He was a Purple Heart recipient, and he was truly a great man. Everybody that met Phil felt like they were the most important person in the room at the time. He had that kind of a personality. You just felt like you're the best. And after you leave the engagement with him, you just feel like I've just met a truly remarkable man. And so rest in peace, Phil. I attended the State of the City luncheon in Phoenix for Mayor Gallego. I was a guest of the Republic Services. It was a great opportunity to network. It was a lot of state officials, a lot of mayors, a lot of town council, and so there was a great chance to network and to find out what's going on around the state. The mayor gave a speech. We had a question and answer afterwards, and I did get a chance to meet the mayor, and I do disagree on some political issues with her, but she's very gracious. She's a very nice person, and it was extremely great to meet her. I did a business retention meeting this week with Amanda and with Betsy from the chamber. We visited with the Comfort Inn, and it was another just truly great meeting. He's been in town since 1996, and he runs a very successful business. And just getting these meetings that the people can talk to the town council, the business development, the chamber. There's a great synergy there. We do these on an ongoing basis, and I'm just so glad to be a part of it. And people can get things answered and get things done for their business, and we're all about being business friendly. Like the Vice Mayor said, Fountain Hills Cares meeting is coming up on the 20th. It addresses the mental health crisis, cyberbullying, and the youth drug addiction. So for all you people that have kids or would just like to attend, that'll be on the 20th at the community center. I did go to the budget workshop. It was great, a lot of innovative ideas. They also introduced workplace housing, where maybe we can build housing in Fountain Hills, and for people that work here, we can get it subsidized, and so people that work here can live here, which would be kind of nice because our businesses are all struggling to get personnel. So it's an innovative idea, and it was great. Tomorrow, I will be attending the pedestrian and safety traffic meeting. The suggestion was made by Councilman Friedel to pivot this meeting to being a pedestrian and safety committee. And I think that's a great idea because I think public safety right now is on everybody's mind. So I'll be proud to go to that tomorrow, and maybe we can discuss not only streets, but just general safety. Thanks everyone tonight for coming. It's just a blessing to have so many people here on Cox Channel 11, on YouTube. They say a town deserves the government it gets, and with this kind of a turnout and this much excitement, you deserve the greatest government in the whole world. So congratulations, stellar students, and Alan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, congratulations to the stellar students. It's a great night. Remember this honor. A couple things that happened the last week that I was involved in is Thursday, I did go out north of the middle school. I did check out that encampment. And I do want to kind of give props to Captain Kraser. I'm sure he's just right around the corner there. So I emailed him, he knows this, 9 a.m., gave him some details. By lunchtime, he emailed me back saying that he had already completed the forms, he already had a bunch of information. So I just kind of give real props to him. That was very fast and really, really was on the ball there and got the information back so we can give it to the people. So that's very, very good. And then yesterday, I actually had an opportunity to watch the first part of the boys, men's baseball game for the Falcons. And I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing because I had another meeting to go to, which I'm going to mention. But here is the beauty of it is that, so I had to leave a little early. And sure enough, they hit back-to-back home runs right before I had to leave. And they went on to a very big victory last night. So that's really awesome. Congratulations. And they're really making a name for themselves. As they go farther up. And then last night, I actually got to attend a fundraiser and an information event for the USS Arizona Foundation. There have been 3 ships that have been named USS Arizona, but there's a 4th right now. The keel was actually laid last December, and this organization is made up of many people in Arizona, but also some grandchildren and great-grandchildren of survivors of the USS Arizona. And this is a Virginia-class attack submarine that's currently in Rhode Island, and it's going to be going down the Connecticut, and it should actually be christened sometime end of next year. So that's something very exciting, and it's also very exciting to continue to promote the USS Arizona name. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Councilman. So yes, Earth Day's Saturday, and we're going to have an event over at the community center from 10 to 12. And it's with Republic Services and EPCOR. There's going to be booths and prizes, and I think food truck. And the recycled art contest, they'll be giving out cash prizes for different age groups. So that'll be going on. Rachel and Captain Kratzer and I got to meet with the county attorney, Rachel Mitchell. So that was a very nice meeting, and she would welcome anybody to check out what she does, and I was really happy to meet her. Met with the superintendent, Phil Yin, of course, and Sharon, you might not like me saying this, but the Suns are playing game 2 at 7, so if the stellar students want to leave, they're free to do that. So this is the first time, so under our reports now, we're going to do stellar students, but so I also have an outgoing commissioner, Mary Edman, and a proclamation for somebody sitting up here who's near and dear to us. So what I'll do is, like for usually with the kids, and plus we have 2 months of kids, so I'll read from up here, then I'll come down, and we'll do the picture, and we'll do it with both March and April, and then I'll stay down and we'll move straight to the other presentations. So I will start with March, and I'll start with McDowell Mountain, and the first student is Noelle Perkins. Is Noelle here? So I'll read. Noelle is on her way up. So Noelle is an active listener. She always follows directions the first time. She tries her best during each activity and lesson. She's a great role model for other students in her class, and I can always count on her to stay on task. Noelle Perkins. Thank you. I forgot to say, the kids come up, and then Angela gives them their certificate. So from McDowell, Wesley Oslin. Is Wesley here? Well, I'm going to read some stuff about Wesley anyway. Wesley is so much fun to have in class. He actively participates in each lesson and brings plenty of fun and new ideas to each activity. He's a great role model for the whole class. I can always count on him. Follows directions the first time and stays on task. That's Wesley. Next, we go to the middle school. For March is Lillian Santofonte. Is Lillian here? Yay. Lillian. When working in groups on projects, Lily motivates and inspires her peers to stay on task and produce the team's personal best. As a student leader, Lily always demonstrates our school's PBIS expectations on being respectful, responsible, safe, and kind. Way to go, Lily. Lily Santofonte. From Fountain Hills Middle School, Tyler Robinson. Is Tyler here? Yay. Tyler. Tyler has worked so hard this year in all subjects with great enthusiasm and dedication. He's a model student who always follows our school PBIS expectations. He is respectful, responsible, safe, kind. We are so proud of our 5th grade Falcon, Tyler Robinson. We go up to the high school now. Leah Newsham. Is Leah here? Leah. Leah is a student that most teachers love to have. She always gives 110% and makes sure all the tasks are accomplished. She is an outstanding student for this honor. Leah. And last for March, from the high school, Devin Copeland. Is Devin here? Well, I'll read about Devin and then we'll clap. Devin is a super consistent student. He applies himself with fervor and zeal, especially on topics of interest. I appreciate him and his contributions to class. I strongly recommend him for this honor. Devin Copeland. Now, next, we're going to go to April, and we go to McDowell Mountain with Catherine Rodriguez. Is Catherine here? Oh, well, I will read this from about Catherine is an active participant in all classroom activities, and she's quick to help a fellow student whenever they need it. She always has a smile on her face and is a joy to teach. Catherine Rodriguez. Yes. Next, from McDowell Mountain, Mason Jacoby. Is Mason here? All right. Mason is always on task and follows all directions the first time they're given. He's dependable. I can always count on him to be a good role model for all our other students. That's Mason Jacoby. Now the middle school, Ashley Aguilar Navarro. Is Ashley here? Hey. Ashley is an amazing student and Fountain Hills Middle School citizen. She always goes above and beyond in and out of the classroom. She always does her best in class, which shows in her grades, and she also earns an A in her character by being helpful to her peers and always has a smile on her face. Ashley, thank you. Also from the middle school is Knox Peters. Is Knox here? Yay, there you go. Knox is a pleasure to have in class. He's always willing to participate, is always working hard and staying current in class, and genuinely a nice person, which is acknowledged by his peers. Knox also carries on great conversations. Knox. Peters. the high school. Michaela Lucchese, is Michaela here? We'll read about Michaela. Michaela is a humble student who doesn't realize what an impact she makes. She's eager to not only learn, but to excel academically. She'll put in effort above and beyond what is expected, not only for the grade, although that's very important to her, but in order to further her understanding. She's respectful, responsible, self-motivated, and consistent. She's respected by her peers, and again, without hesitation, I'm excited for Michaela to be recognized for her traits as a student. That's Michaela Lucchese from the... And last but not least from the high school, J.D. Manley. Is J.D. here? Yeah, there you go. J.D. is a student who's very dependable. I can count on him to be an exemplary student who strives to understand the content. He is organized, incredibly kind, and respectful. He's always prepared for class and readily participates in discussions. Additionally, J.D. looks for the good in others and encourages them to also strive for excellence. I've been impressed with his character this year. Without hesitation, I recommend him for this award. He deserves it. J.D. Manley. All right. All right, guys ready? Yeah, really. Keep smiling. All righty. Congratulations, all. Thanks a lot. Oh, they are. Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate you coming. Is Mary Edman here? Come on up. Hi there. Okay, you get to hold this and look at everyone, and then I'm going to make you talk. All right, so we'd like to take this opportunity to recognize Mary Edman, who was appointed to the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission by the Town Council in April of 2021. During her time on the commission, Mary was actively involved in projects and initiatives, including the development of the 2022 Strategic Plan. The council and her fellow commissioners appreciate Mary's knowledge, dedication, and contributions to the commission and to the town of Fountain Hills. Thank you so much, Mary. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's truly been my honor to play a small part in this community, and I would recommend it to any resident to get involved. It's a wonderful experience, and it also is something that you can give back. Thank you very much.
So we don't get to do this often, but the clerk's on the hot seat, but it should be in a good way. So we're going to have Linda come down, and I'm going to read a proclamation for Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Here you go. So here come the whereases. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants and provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk, now therefore, I, Jenny Dickey, Mayor, do recognize the week of April 30th through May 6th as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our clerk, Linda Mendenhall, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. So there you go, Linda. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I am your town clerk, and I am interested in getting to know you and knowing what's important to you. I'm here to handle everything that comes before council. I want to make sure everything runs smoothly. I love public comment. I love to see you here. I love to see people engaged in their community, in their government, elections. I'm so happy to see that Fountain Hills has one of the highest percentage for elections. So I could talk all day about how I love participation in our town government and especially in the election process. So if you have any questions about elections, I'm here and I'm ready to serve.
Thank you. The last thing I wanted to mention is that today is Holocaust Remembrance Day, and we will keep that in mind. And then, and the Fill-In celebration, I already mentioned that, so thank you so much. Our next item is our presentation number 6, which is Public Works Director, sorry, got a lot of stuff up here, pavement management update for 2022-23. Thank you, Justin.
Madam Mayor, council members, a disclaimer up front. The PowerPoint that I am presenting right now is not the one that is in the packet. With direction, some corrections have been made and some past history has been included in this. Also, the town manager and myself and the town engineer continue to work with the Volunteer Citizen Street Committee on coming to the council with a final report prior to summer break. We do not have that date exactly because we're still crunching an incredible amount of data. With that said, this is the approach professionally that we use for our best pavement management and maintenance practices. The intent is to apply a cost-effective treatment at the right time. That can be incredibly challenging, and so we rely on data and our own professional opinions to ensure that what we are doing is spending the money in the right place at the right time. In doing so, we increase the life of the pavement that we own, which is a substantial investment that the town owns. This is the past 7 years prior to this year, the investment that the town made in pavement management. It should be noted that just prior to this time, there was a resolution by the mayor and council to identify some funding and hold off for 1 year, put that funding together that's included in that resolution, and get away from the zone approach of doing slurry seal 1 zone per year, and it would take approximately 7 years to go in that loop, simply because as that process was moving forward, the backlog that the town had was increasing substantially. We know the reason that the former administration, the director of public works and the street superintendent did it. They were struggling for funding. This is what took place in year 15-16. This is a $1.4 million investment. These streets were milled and overlaid, returning them to practically new. This one right here is for fiscal year 16-17. The longer red lines are mill and overlay. The small squares that you see are areas where the intersections had completely failed, more often than not as a result of heavier truck traffic in regards to refuse and or construction. Those areas were saw cut and removed and reconstructed in anticipation of this map. Should be noted that the solid blue line is what we refer to as the zone we are working in. The solid red line is an area where we milled and overlaid, and the yellow represents a type 2 polymer slurry. It's important to note in regards to the last item, the type 2 polymer slurry, prior to that application, we go through and fill all of the cracks in the street with a rubberized product. This map is a little bit challenging to read. We'll go back a little bit. Keep in mind that these were archived and it took me a little while to find them. This is a $3.2 million investment, primarily, again, in mill and overlay. So these streets were either milled to full depth, or if there was adequate depth in the cross section, a minimum of 2 inches. And then the 2 little tiny blue dots you see there were relatively new streets that were turned over to the town that received their first treatment, which in this case we refer to as a mineral bond, but it's a preservative seal. Now we're getting to the exciting part. This is the town center. Please take note of the bright blue area, which I refer to as turquoise. That area was not included in 1920. The reason for that, in the intersection of La Montana and Avenue of the Fountains, right off the corner of this building, construction was underway for a roundabout. So what was completed in 1920 were the red lines, which is primarily Avenue, Parkview, and Verde River. This was also part of that year. And again, all of these long red lines and even the short ones that appear to be a tail, which are the cul-de-sac bulbs, all of this is mill and overlay. Let's go back one. Just so you know, for year 1920, the total investment for both of these slides was $2.9 million. Moving on to 2021. Now, the town center area has reappeared on this map, and this time it's in bright green. The roundabout was nearing completion, and it was in the best interest in regards to the town to go ahead and pave the areas leading up to it and immediately adjacent to it, so we would have new pavement for the town center. The other area that you see on the bottom right and the bottom left and the top center, those are local roads, and those local roads were milled and overlaid. This was 21-22. These roads right here were milled and overlaid. They were in very, very poor condition. This is the second sheet for 21-22. Total of $1.3 million invested. The 0.3 is for these 2 local roads. The $1 million is for the preservative seal. It's important to note at this time that a gracious grant project that the town received from MAG, including a sidewalk on Saguaro from Colony to Fountain Hills Boulevard, for reasons related to that, we stopped this preservative seal right here at Colony because the sidewalk will be constructed on both sides of the road all the way up to here. We don't want to use the limited funding we have to put a treatment in there only for it to be damaged and or destroyed during construction. Once that MAG project is completed, staff will return to that area and do the preservative seal for that. Now we're up to the current time. There are primarily just a few sources that we get funding. The biggest one that we receive is the state shared funding, which we refer to as Highway User Transportation Funds, HERF, but to the town it's known as the Street Fund. We are projected that we would receive $1.9 million for this year. As of last month, we had collected 1.2 of that state shared revenue. The next one up is the sales tax, which is a 0.2% is given to the street department. The projected, based on projections, we would be receiving 1.1 million before the end of the year. We've collected 900,000 as of the end of March. And lastly, the vehicle license tax. We had projected 790,000, and to date we have received 560,000 of that. With that, we're going to go into the levels of service that were adopted by the mayor and council several years ago. The level of service really represents the rideability and the pavement condition that you see and feel. The adopted one for arterials, the arterials are Shea, Saguaro, Fountain Hills Boulevard, and Palisades. That one is a grade score, which we had to do a little manipulating to that. Basically a 60 to 70 for the arterials. Collectors, I'll just point out a few, not all of them. Grande is a collector. El Pueblo is a collector. That one right there is a 50 to 60. And lastly, the local streets, which equals a C, a 50 to 55. It should be noted that these numbers are going to become more relevant and clear very shortly when not only the street committee, but our vendor does an update to the mayor and council. You're going to see several of these numbers, and you'll see that by and far, we're in relatively good condition on our collectors. The reason for that is Shea was done in the last several years. All of Shea was paid for by grant funding. Saguaro was a bond. The other two, which is Fountain Hills Boulevard and Palisades, Palisades from Shea up to Golden Eagle Boulevard, imagine it's really not that old. It wasn't paved but just a few years ago, so it's in pretty good shape. The section that we have challenges with is between Golden Eagle and Saguaro. Again, these numbers will become more clear as we move forward. This is the basic pavement life cycle adopted by the town based on our rate of deterioration. So that's the curve. The rate of deterioration changes from location to location. A good example, but here in Arizona, is Flagstaff. They have extreme temperature fluctuations of thaw freeze. In fact, some of that in the same day recently. With that, their pavements are under stresses that ours typically don't have to endure. As you can see, if you start at 0, we have a new street. 5 to 7 years around this circle, we apply a treatment of some sort based on the life of that pavement. Any questions in regards to the pavement life cycle?
I have just one question from the one before. Those numbers, were those like a minimum service? Like, were those the minimum levels that we had set, or is that our goal?
Madam Mayor, that's an excellent question. So this is a minimum, and the way I described it to staff when they were not comfortable using letter grades that appeared to be this low, I said, this is a minimum. We have a B and we're passing. That doesn't mean we can't get an A+, or we can bump a C up. So as we do road work, the pavement condition index for that road goes substantially higher than it was prior. And each one of them are a little bit different. But properly done, the pavement condition index would be above a 75 or 80. And that would give us an A in this. A little bit above that, an 85 would give us an A+. So this is the minimum, but we can always do better, and we certainly do.
And if I remember correctly, it has to do with trying not to get to that point, that tipping point. So if you can maintain that, then on everything, then we can avoid that collapse.
Once your PCI really gets into the mid to low 40s or below that, more often than not, and we refer to that as backlog, that road has to be reconstructed. And approximately 60% of the town's roads are in that condition right now. Any additional questions on the pavement life cycle? I knew I should have made this 78 slides. This year, the mayor and council budgeted $3.9 million. Currently, to date, we have invested 2.7 of that in pothole repair, asphalt repairs, crack sealing, preservative seals, slurry seals, and then as we perform this work on all of the local streets, the collectors and the arterials, we make sure to repair the concrete curbs, the curb opening ramps, those types of things. A little bit more detail on the following slides. This is what we have spent as of this afternoon on pothole repair, $200,000. Our prioritization for pothole repair, as you can see, is the arterials, the highest traffic volume. The next one down is the collectors, and with all due respect to the residents, we do get to the local streets and we fix them as quickly as we can based on the prioritization. To date, these are asphalt repairs on local streets and some collectors where we simply, the pothole is unimaginable. We saw cut and remove that and repair it in that section. We spent $192,000 to date as of this afternoon on that. And lastly, $260,000 on crumbling concrete, so the curbs, the ramps, and the valley gutter. Keep in mind that some of this work is forthcoming before June 30th. The areas highlighted in green were the areas that you saw on an earlier map from 15, where the town opted to stop doing anything for a couple of years, save up the money. The mayor and council allotted some funding. This entire area right here was milled and overlaid and repaired. This is its year for its first treatment. As you can see, to seal the cracks in this area was just over $500,000. To preserve it was $1.4 billion. This is another project that we've been working on for a considerable amount of time. This is one of 3 slides. This is El Lago between Fountain Hills Boulevard and Palisades. Staff approached the mayor and council on this almost a year and a half ago and proposed that we do some pavement maintenance with traffic calming involved in it. That was just finished last week. This is what El Lago looked like 2 weeks ago. And this is what it looked like yesterday. On this one right here, we're going to take just a few minutes. In regards to the traffic calming, you'll now see that we have an 8-foot shoulder, a 5-foot bike lane, an 11-foot travel lane, and a 12-foot two-way left turn lane. In the past, the parking lane and or the shoulder could be anywhere from 8 to 12 feet wide. These travel lanes could be as wide as 18 feet, and this two-way left turn lane, more often than not, was about 20 feet. Keep in mind that El Lago in this location was designed to be 2 lanes in each direction with no on-street parking and a two-way left turn lane in the center. We anticipate, based on feedback this afternoon from an individual in this room, that this traffic calming measure, in his opinion, is working. He followed some vehicles down from Palisades and noted that they were going considerably slower. We have data for speed and volume for this area that we collected. We will now go back and collect that data again to determine the benefit of this traffic calming. The intent is on these unusually large, wide roads that we will apply these pavement markings when we treat them, because other municipal governments, including the county and the city of Phoenix, have had a very positive outcome with this type of traffic calming, which is considerably less expensive than narrowing the road.
If I may, before you switch slides.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for remembering the bikers. My only complaint would be I want the little biker guy painted on there so people understand that's what it's for. Otherwise, we're very excited about the bike lane. Thank you.
You're welcome. Please note that this is the temporary paint here. In 60 or so days, depending on how quickly this cures, this will be recoated with thermoplastic, and at that time, all of the bike symbols and all of the lane assignments, those are the arrows, will be replaced with thermoplastic. We will also now update the mag map to show this as a dedicated bike lane. With that, and I'd mentioned in my opening statements that the town manager and I are working with the Volunteer Streets Committee to come forward with a final report and some funding mechanism or solutions for the outlying years. With that said, this is what the town manager and I are proposing for next fiscal year. A little bit of background information. These roads were originally slated to be done in this year, if at all possible. I became increasingly uncomfortable with that because we had not done our due diligence, because this money was not in our budget up front and we hadn't planned for it. I spoke with the previous town manager and the current town manager and explained to them that we needed to complete our due diligence on this. One of the primary ones is utility clearance letters. Prior to undertaking and spending $5 million of someone else's money, we need to make sure that the roads that are selected do not fall in the 5-year horizon of water, sewer, electricity, gas, where it occurs, or communication lines. If in fact that is the case, we will select a different road, similar in length and width, to put on the map and do that and allow that utility to go in there and work. The last thing we want is to make this type of an investment and have the road destroyed by construction for utilities. The next one, part of the due diligence, which is very important, is our geotechnical. We discovered that some of the as-builts that we inherited from the master planner for the community and developers, that they're not accurate. So we went out and did some paving to discover what we believed to be there was not. In fact, when it should have been 2 or more inches thick of asphalt, it was 1.5 to 2 inches. We had to make some decisions at that time, and it drove the cost up substantially. So our geotechnical exploration will be out over the next several weeks, finishing up, drilling holes in all of these roads to get us a cross-section, almost 2 foot deep, tell us what's there, and provide us a recommendation on how best to move forward to meet our own adopted subdivision standards. Believe it or not, that's all of it, although I could continue to go on.
Questions or comments? Councilwoman?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Am I to assume that basically the pre-incorporation roads just need to be repaved, and then possibly the post-incorporation roads could just be milled? Is that a proper assumption?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, the pre-incorporation roads need to be reconstructed. So the asphalt and the underlayment needs to be removed, approximately 8 inches total in depth,
Right.
and a select material. The post-incorporation roads will simply receive a mill and an overlay 1.5 to 2 inches deep.
Right. And what is the cost per linear mile to do the mill and overlay? If you don't have that, that's okay. You weren't expected that. I was just wondering the cost savings between a total repave and the mill and overlay, because it seems like a really good solution.
Councilmember, the last time that we looked, I believed it was a little bit above $3.5 million for a local road per mile to have it reconstructed. and that included the appurtenances, which were curb, gutter, sidewalks, that type of thing. We don't have as much of that. I don't have our mill and overlay, but I'll certainly send you something on that before the close of the week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So you had the El Lago. What kind of a road, what is the characteristic of Palomino? Is that a collector, or how is that categorized?
Palomino, Madam Mayor, is categorized as a collector.
Collector.
And I don't want to do a lot of history here, but a little bit of history. The previous town manager, based on traffic volumes, had several different classifications that are not recognized by the industry, including but not limited to minor and major collectors. So he would have referred to Palomino as a major. But the bottom line is Palomino is a collector. It's also a pre-incorporation road, which is basically 1.5 to 2 inches of asphalt on 1 inch of select material and graded desert. That's one of the ones that will need to be reconstructed.
Okay, so if that one was something that we could, because I know you're physically saying that we can't probably go beyond this 5 million, but if that was a separate project and you're saying it has to be reconstructed, do you have any idea how much that would be?
Madam Mayor, I do not have that estimate tonight. And there's a couple of reasons. One, Palomino can be reconstructed in its current configuration. I would make a strong argument that the configuration for Palomino change primarily for traffic calming measures and secondarily for future reduced cost. My suggestion was to narrow Palomino and add curb, gutter, and sidewalk on either side. For those that may or may not be cringing right now because of the steep slopes, the new sidewalk, curb, and gutter would go on the flat portion. What we would be doing is narrowing the road and narrowing the travel lanes and the two-way left turn lane. It would be very similar to what I just showed you for El Lago. The exception to that is that there would be a sidewalk on either side, but we would still have on-street parking, an adequate width for a bike lane, travel lanes, and a two-way left turn. Road narrowing is one of the best traffic calming measures that we have available, including but not limited to speed tables and speed humps, which more often than not cause issues.
I guess we've heard some obviously feedback about Palomino, and seeing El Lago in that photo just looked like it would be a perfect solution, but it's a whole different situation if the road can't be repaired that way. But I think it's a future discussion to have on that, because once we're talking about sidewalks and everything else, maybe it ends up looking like a whole different project. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Mayor. It sounds like we've been getting the same emails because Palomino keeps coming up I think to all of us on the council. And Alan just looked it up. I guess it's 4 miles long, so I know that's a very
1.4.
1.4. Okay, that's better. But I think it's on everybody's mind that's one of the ones that we have to put on the top of the list.
Thanks, Mayor. Not to put you on the spot, but El Lago around the War Memorial is in kind of rough shape. Do you have any anticipation as to when we're going to address that and what needs to be done there?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, we did go in right there at that little U-turn near the memorial and removed that and repaired that area. This section of El Lago is really in our backlog, so most of it cannot be saved with the exception of the part that was newly constructed with Plaza Fountainside up closer to Saguaro. That one is in the outlying years. I don't have any outlying year maps right now simply because we're still crunching that data, but we will see where it falls on the prioritization and optimization of the available funding based on the scenarios that we have and get you that.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Our next item is call to the public I'm going to ask you to please speak in the microphone. I keep hearing that, that people that watch can't hear. And do we have speaker cards? Yes.
Yes, Mayor, we do. I don't see him. Larry Myers, are you still here? Oh, there you are.
Okay, Mayor, Council, the mayor and I finally agree. The Suns are playing tonight, and I have tickets, so I'm going to read this really fast. First, I'd like to preference what I say with the fact that I've spent my entire career in RF, radio frequency. That's the large family in which small cell towers reside technologically. My talk tonight underscores the need for everyone to get educated, so I'm happy to hear you're finally going to educate yourself after a year of being beaten up on this. On the 6th, and it's exemplified by a quote from one of our council people sent to me a few days ago, and I'll redact it a little bit for anonymity. Quote, I live in a cell phone dead zone. I'm polling my neighbors to see how they feel about cell towers before I act, unquote. This person obviously does not know that small cell towers have nothing to do with voice traffic. They're for data. And I bet there's a lot of people that don't know that, so don't feel left out. So when asked about licenses coming in during the working of the commercial detox ordinance, John Wesley, Town Services Director, is on record paraphrasing that no licenses would be issued while the ordinance is under construction. This, however, is contradicted by Mr. Wesley on March 30th, 2023, with a quote, the town does not have a policy that stops the processing of an application while a text amendment is being considered. All applications are processed under the rules in place at the time the application was submitted, unquote. So I ask, which statement is correct? And which procedure would he follow? If the town received 1,000 applications tomorrow, that's concerning to me. To add further lack of clarity, just last meeting when asked about the requested moratorium subject by Councilman Friedel, our town attorney misled the council in stating, quote, if we could adopt a moratorium, theoretically, yes. Would it have any practical effect? Question mark, no, because federal law preempts any moratorium that we adopt, unquote. Unequivocally, a false statement. In the packet you're in possession of is one of the countless municipalities east in Connecticut. Their moratorium was put in August of 2021 and is in place today till the end of 2023. A simple one-page document allowing for time to make an educated decision on this subject before the telecom industry storms the town, much like the detox industry continues to attempt to do. One last comment before the council and the town attorney invokes the, oh my God, we'll be sued by the telecoms. That's absolutely untrue, as well as they are unable to charge the town any money for any legal actions. That's how it works. You can look that up if you doubt me. So my request would be that on the very next agenda, May 2nd, for discussion and possible action, a moratorium be put in place on the applications until December 31st, 2023, or until such time as education has taken place on the subject. Copy the verbiage from the one in your packet if you need to do
Sir,
so.
your time
Thank
is
you very
up.
much.
Thank you. And we will address questions at the end of call to the public.
Next, we have Lori Trawler.
Council, Rachel, Aaron, Laura Truller, resident. When a town decides to correct an ordinance, per se, or updating that ordinance, that such that that affects the permitting, obviously any permit that is requested during that time can and should be held until the ordinance is corrected. This should be standard practice for any ordinance updates. That's called a moratorium, whether it's formal or informal. The definition of the moratorium we are asking for is a halt of permitting small wireless transmission facility applications till the end of December or till the time period it takes from now to the time that the new ordinance is effective. This, the immediacy is the telecoms will apply for all the towers they need to blanket Fountain Hills all in one day. That minimum number of applications per telecom company for this town is approximately 2,000. That day, that one day, is the day that it is too late to make sure our ordinance is okay. That is too late to do anything about it, because once these are approved, they're in there forever, unless we put a moratorium in place. The process we have now says that the moment we receive an application, we have to process that in 10 days. By default, all 2,000 applications will be automatically approved if we don't get that done in 10 days. John Wesley will be processing these as if he or anyone could possibly properly review 2,000 applications in 10 days. The ordinance we have does not protect the residents from excessive property devaluation, privacy issues, and untested exposure. It is past time to make this priority. Over the 100 notices you will be served with tonight represents a small sampling of the example of the passion of the residents that are extremely concerned that you are not doing what you should to keep your oath to we the people to protect our health and welfare and your personal liability for our property values. This notice informs that the state law that our current ordinance is breaking, the responsibility you have to the people to place the moratorium, and the fact that the Telecommunications Act does not supersede the state's protections we have. As a resident of this town and representative of other residents in this town, we would like and are asking for the aforementioned moratorium to be on the agenda or be an agenda item at the next meeting for discussion and possible action. Thank you. And Justin, I'm going to get an asphalt company because somebody's making a ton of money. That's very expensive. Thank you.
Our next is Liz Gildersleeve.
Good evening, everybody. I recently read in the Phoenix newspapers that Arizona School Superintendent Tom Horn was extending the deadline for towns to apply for grants for police officers for their schools, thanks to a whopping $50 million safety grant through the Arizona Department of Education. Mr. Horn said that he was in the process of writing letters to all mayors regarding the grant extension, which has been extended till April 22nd. Mayor Dickey, I hope you have already received his letter and are taking action concerning the grant. I would also hope that our town would jump at the chance to apply for this grant and have another officer at our schools to ensure children's safety. In doing further digging on this grant process, I've learned that a letter is required from Captain Kratzer to ensure that there is an available officer. And I've got to think that there's a retired police officer or a police officer nearing retirement somewhere in Arizona who would welcome this opportunity. Fountain Hills taxpayers already pay for one school officer, but there are multiple campuses. 2 would be better than 1, especially if grant funding could pay for the second officer or even pay for the 1 officer that we already have, although I personally would prefer another set of eyes. According to polls included with the news stories announcing the $50 million safety grant, approximately 80% of parents in Maricopa County would welcome having more police officers in their kids' schools, and who could blame them? It would be very foolish not to take advantage of this grant. On another note, but also under the category of unintended consequences of inaction, I want to make a quick statement concerning the telecom moratorium that Lori Troller just talked about. Ms. Troller has a compelling viewpoint about the need for a stronger ordinance regarding where and how telecom equipment is placed in our neighborhoods. Certainly, everyone wants faster internet, but there should be stricter guidelines for the placement of the equipment and where it can be located, preferably underground. Hopefully, we can all agree for that. Who wants an 18-foot tower in their front yard? I don't. Currently, that's possible, so not adopting a stronger ordinance, which cities and towns are able to do, could result in those unintended consequences like decreased property values, ugly eyesores, and even increased health risks. Thank you for your attention tonight.
Next, we have Jeff Sellers.
Greetings, everybody. Loud enough? I'll make it fairly quick. I'm not here representing anyone other than myself and I suppose my colleague here. And perhaps in some unofficial way, all of the rest of the epileptics in the world. There is a serious threat to all of us in my situation from RF radiation. It's a well-known cause, a well-known trigger. We picked a house where we did specifically because we were that far from towers. So you're gonna put a tower in within the range of where is a safe loop for me. I have to move. It's that serious. And really, that's about all I have to say. You need to think about this one, because if it's in and close to around people, you've got cardiac patients with pacemakers, known problem. Dementia patients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that's any kind of a neurologic issue or, you know, defib, et cetera, people with, you know, drug pumps, you know, pain relieving pumps and things like that in their body. All of these things are impacted by RF radiation. This is why they can't go through the little detector things in the airports. So really that's it. But this potentially, it's not just the money, it's that you're literally putting people at risk. If that goes within a quarter of a mile of my house, I'm moving because I can't stay there. Thank you.
No applause, please.
Next, we have James Kirk.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, esteemed members of the council. Last Friday, I discovered that I was a victim of multiple felonies, including identity theft. MCSO, LAPD, and the FBI are currently investigating these claims, and my legal team is preparing for litigation against the perpetrators. While it is still early in this investigation, it has been identified that a member of this council before me is involved in this case. Therefore, I'm asking that the town attorney and the town manager institute an investigation of their own, as the town of Fountain Hills could be held liable in this instance. Thank you.
Next, we have Matthew Corrigan.
Madam Mayor, council members, Matthew Corrigan, homeowner, Fountain Hills. As I was driving back from a meeting on Saturday, I took a little detour and decided to drive by Fountain Hills Middle School. And on my way, coming the other way, there was an individual well known to anyone living or visiting in Fountain Hills. And he was pushing a stolen shopping cart from Target. on the sidewalk, and a growing number of individuals ignore existing ordinances prohibiting vagrancy and littering, loitering, illegal camping, and panhandling. Our town government answer seems to be to this problem posting a couple of signs near Shea Boulevard stating it's okay to say no to panhandlers. Give instead to agencies that help those in need. Nice advice. But that advice is the vocation of charitable groups, not government. The town government vocation, your vocation, is to enforce ordinances and keep residents safe. If you want to see how a few government-tolerated and sanctioned homeless encampments can turn into a vast slum covering a massive area of prime downtown real estate, visit The Zone on 8th Avenue in Jefferson, downtown Phoenix. In January 2020, the city of Phoenix sanctioned a homeless zone, which grew from 100 people to over 1,000 residents today, known as The Zone. No one describes the situation better, I think, than the AZ Free News journalist Corinne Murdoch in her March 6, 2023 article. She describes it this way: intense poverty, frequent crime, social insecurity, high mortality, poor living conditions. These qualities describe third world countries. They also describe The Zone. It's an area where law and order don't seem to exist. A premature baby's body was found there last year, burned in the middle of the street. A month after that, in a similar incident, a burned body of a homeless man was found here. Death and evil prevail here. In February 2023, the Phoenix Police Department shot and killed a homeless man who lunged at them with the scissors after a stun gun failed to stop him from attacking a woman. Drug deals, using addicts, defecation, urination, assaults, sexual acts, rapes are done with open impunity. Gangs run the streets in The Zone. Not in Fountain Hills, not if we resist government-assisted housing. Instead, support charities that give recovery and assistance to those individuals and give them hope. As the great Ronald Reagan said, the most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." The government vocation is to enforce the laws and keep residents safe. Thank you.
I can recess, or we can ask people to be removed. No applause. That's in our rules. It's our rules of procedure. Please respect each other.
Next, we have Stephanie Zopp. Hopefully I said your last name correctly. Close, okay.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I grew up in a very modest household. My mother and I were recipients of others' generosity and kindness on more than one occasion, and it was not a time we were proud of. If you have ever had volunteers bring a box of food to your home that you desperately needed, the mixed emotion of shame and extreme gratitude is one I vowed never to feel again. We were extremely thankful for the gift and worked hard that we would not need volunteers from the church to darken our door again. Based on the comments I've seen on social media, a great deal of conversation, kindness, generosity, and opportunity have been given to some of the needy that have been hanging out on our streets, and yet they are still there. Why? Because they don't want to hand up, they want to hand out. So it's time to show them the door. I'm pretty sure none of them are from our community even. Fountain Hills, like the neighborhood I grew up in, takes care of their own. We need to get these people off our streets, off our sidewalks. We don't want to become desensitized as the population grows in Fountain Hills. We're tired of feeling uncomfortable as we try to shop at Target and Safeway. We don't want to have concerns of safety for our school children or our parents as they go about their daily routine. We don't want our small business owners to struggle more than they already do, or our neighbors uncomfortable to access them because of people loitering their storefronts and sidewalks. We need only look to Phoenix, as the gentleman before, I won't go into that. They're dealing with that, and they've been sued and have to clean up the mess there. the city of Phoenix let it go too far. Let's be smart and do some preventative maintenance. The community has attempted to help them become productive members of our town. That method didn't work. Now it's time to evict them. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Alan Meehan.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Town Council members, and staff. My name is Al Meehan, and I live here in Fountain Hills with my beautiful wife, Sandy. I'd like to take a moment and talk about the slippery slope of compassion as it relates to homelessness. I'll tell you why this issue is so important to us. One of our sons and his family recently moved from Eugene, Oregon to a small town in rural Florida. Oregon had been their dream home for the last 14 years. That wasn't an easy decision for them to make, as he operates a commercial fishing boat and has several employees. His wife owned and operated a sustainable clothing manufacturing company and recently walked away from it and its 24 employees. It was their dream to raise their family and retire there. If you've never been to the Oregon coast, it's one of the most beautiful places in our country, much like Fountain Hills. That said, the benefit of raising their children in one of the most beautiful places in our country is offset by the unintended consequences of good intentions where it comes to the misguided helping of the homeless. Eugene, Oregon has become a giant cesspool of filth, crime, drugs, tent cities, derelict cars, junk RVs, constant police sirens, etc., all because the city wants to support the homeless. We helped our kids move. I got out of the car at Home Depot while getting some moving supplies and stepped on a used needle that was left in the parking lot. Take a short drive around town, you'll see any number of people walking the streets high as a kite and screaming at the sky. I saw one person dressed in rags, complete with a football helmet that had the top half of it missing, singing at the top of his lungs at nothing. Panhandlers are everywhere. While in Fred Meyer's store, we stood in amazement as a homeless person walks out after filling his backpack with beverages and snacks without paying. Later, we saw him on the curb sharing his loot with another indigent. There's a giant encampment right next door to a grade school. All it took was one tent. Now there are dozens. The city thinks they're being compassionate, providing drop boxes for needles and porta potties for these encampments. That doesn't help, nor is it compassionate. It's simply enabling behavior. And yes, I call it a behavior because I do believe, in some cases at least, it's their choice to live like this. And what's not to like? No responsibilities, handouts at every turn, drugs and booze all day, all night. One person started a fire on a doorstep of a bakery, and when the owner put it out, he got charged with assault because the homeless person got a little wet in the process. The problem is now so big and so out of control, our kids and grandkids did the only thing they could do, and that was to run. And we don't want to run. We like it here. So, Mayor and Council, I'm glad to hear this issue, and I'm relieved to hear this issue is going to be on the agenda so we can talk about trying to come up with some fixes and some solutions and take steps before it's too late and our beautiful city turns into the Eugene of the Southwest. Don't think it can happen, because it did there if we don't act. Thank you.
Next, we have Andrea Boutzelis.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Last night, I was at the beautiful Golden Eagle Baseball Park at about 9:30 p.m. I'm there every day, often 2 times a day, morning and evening, because I have 2 very young dogs that need a lot of exercise. Last night, for the first time in 8 years, my fight or flight instinct kicked in. There was suspicious activity going on in the parking lot. I know what a drug deal looks like. I felt it, I saw it, and my dog sensed it too. Dogs are smarter than many people I know. Let me repeat, I have never felt my safety was threatened, with the exception of a few javelinas. Fountain Hills has been a town that I've often described as a place you never need to look behind your back for fear danger was lurking. That changed less than 24 hours ago. As disturbing as that is, what's more disturbing is I've now recognized and been told that there was no law enforcement nearby. In fact, I've never seen police patrol the park at night, not once. Now I hear we have a homeless population 150 to 250 feet away from the middle school, and that there was relatively none, if any, police activity there. My question is, why are we not policing our town and protecting our most important residents, our children, families, and visitors? I see police every single day and night in multiple locations, pulling people over and ticketing them. I'm all for enforcing the speed limit, but there seems to be a disproportionate use of our resources, and those who need the most protection are of less importance than revenues generated from traffic violations. Our children are the most precious resource in this community, which was beautifully demonstrated tonight. I would ask that we place more importance on their safety as well as our residents. I've read the crime report in the Fountain Hills Times for years. Crime is increasing. That was a rare thing just a few years ago. I've met people who had their homes and cars broken into. I've seen more police activity in this town in the form of traffic stops than patrolling the areas where the most vulnerable are: schools, baseball fields, restaurants, all business parking lots, and residential neighborhoods, and I might add dog parks. I respectfully ask that all of you, with your platform and your influence in Fountain Hills, please keep us safe.
Next is Paul Bosey.
Good evening, everyone. I would just like to say I'm in total agreement with every person that just came up here and spoke about this issue, which was brought up in the beginning of this meeting. They've said everything I was going to say. I was relieved, Councilwoman, that you addressed the sheriff with that. That seemed to me like a simple answer. Do you have a permit or not? If you don't, you got to leave. I do appreciate the sheriff coming up here and explaining. I feel better that it's at least being looked at. But I want to say thank you to a lot of squeaky wheels, not all of whom I know, that what makes me a little uneasy is that I'm not sure this would have got rolling without them. Thank you.
Next, we have Libby Settle.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Libby Settle, and I stand before you this evening as a concerned parent and community member. I want to say thank you for the quick response and action regarding the concerns this past week. I really appreciate it. My family and I have been fortunate enough to call Fountain Hills home for the past 18 years, and we've never been concerned as deeply as we are currently. As you've heard from Captain Kratzer, on the morning of Tuesday, April 11th, there was an individual sitting on the curb and into the bike lane on Fountain Hills Boulevard, or McDowell Mountain Road, directly across from the Fountain Hills Middle School, watching the students being dropped off at school and playing outside while our MCSO officers were pulling over speeding vehicles. After discussing this concern with other concerned parents, a parent went out to see how close to the school the encampment actually was. Once they were there, they noticed a makeshift shelter, buckets, generator, gas cans, and other garbage just north of the middle school. It was located on one of the trails where the individual can walk to the top of the ravine less than 50 feet and stand there and lurk and stare at our children while they're on the playground without anyone noticing. This is highly concerning as we look around the nation at what is happening. We must take the safety of our community's children seriously and ensure that this camp does not grow and our children and parents don't feel threatened. I ask you, Mayor and Council, to have MCSO enforce the laws and regulations already in place and create stricter policies regarding the proximities to our schools. Additionally, I ask you to move this agenda item up from June. We need to ensure our unsheltered community members have access to the assistance they need, like a new leaf, and our Fountain Hills families are provided with the utmost reassurance that their children are safe, not only from vehicles speeding down the road, but from any and all perceived threats towards their children. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Wendy Bosey.
Hello. I too am very happy to hear the results of some people going out to check about the homeless situation behind the middle school. I discovered it on my own during the school's spring break. I was back there hiking with my dogs and came across it, and I didn't see any people, but I noticed a lot of buckets and things that looked rather permanent. So I had talked to my husband about it, and he went out with me, and I showed him also where it was and was just able to locate where it was. And we'd made a couple of reports but hadn't gotten anywhere. So I'm glad to hear that something is going on. We do have vagrancy laws and laws that just need to be enforced. And I've lived here for 24 years, and I've worked for our school for the entire times we've lived here. And McDowell Mountain is going to be at the new middle school location. So I would like to know, to feel safe working in that location, but in all the locations too, but just the proximity of that area. There's a lot of open desert right behind that school, and we're all looking at it as we move for safety for the kids. So I appreciate and I encourage to some of the no trespassing kind of things that might relay into the school property to help our kids. So thank you very much.
Next, we have Ed Stizza.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Good evening, Vice Mayor and staff. So you've heard everything there is to hear about the homeless situation. The only thing that's not really being said that I've noticed is the fact that there's got to be these people need to be addressed with some sort of mental illness and or dealing with mental illness. And that's been my experience talking to these people, because I've offered them jobs. I know several people have offered them jobs. And we can debate who wants to work and who doesn't want to work, but there is a mental illness problem with most of these people walking the streets of Fountain Hills. So that's got to get addressed. Now, does that mean we need a homeless shelter here? God, no. You know, so it's just like having detox facilities here. There's not enough population that certainly needs to have that be another detriment to the community. So couple things. Rachel, welcome. And you and Kevin have done an absolutely bang-up job with the skate park. I've heard nothing but kudos, and people love it. They feel it's very, very good. So that's great, but welcome. Hopefully this is gonna be fun at some point, right? So, but thank you for your service and everybody else's service. The other thing, with 5G, it is so important. I do not understand, including with the homelessness issue, why we cannot move the agenda items up faster, okay? These are, you have residents here that are taking time out, and I'll try to be quick with this, that are here and they're expressing their concerns, okay? So why can't we move faster on this? It shouldn't be that difficult. Our agenda items are not packed, you know, so, and it's certainly, if something gets done, it would lessen, you know, the amount of people sitting here keeping us from the Suns game. So I'm glad to hear that we're gonna talk about the logo tonight. So very, very important, how can I say, decision to be made on that. And hopefully, well, I'll speak during the logo part of it. So, but yeah, thank you guys for everything. So the town has been an absolute joy over the past several months. And let's really work hard to keep it that way. I mean, you've got a lot of residents that love this place, more so than a lot of places I've been in the country. So this is something you've got to take some importance with these items. And thank you.
So the next ones are not, they're just written comments. John P. and Margaret A. Jones wish to comment in writing that they're for a moratorium on 5G in Fountain Hills. Theodore C. Price, he is also for a moratorium on 5G cell towers. Ronald Peterson is also, he's against 5G tower zoning. But you also have a comment, so he makes a little bit, he talks a little bit more about setbacks and so forth. Then we also have Linda Olson, who is also against 5G tower installations in Fountain Hills, and she wrote a comment too, which is at your station. And then Jane Bell is also for, she supports a 5G moratorium. And then I had some others who dropped off comments, but I don't know if they're here, and if they didn't check if they wanted to speak or not. So if you're here, Maureen Earp, are you here? Okay, so she's probably just wanting to let us know that she wants a 5G moratorium. Mark Earp, he also wants to have a 5G moratorium. How about Gary Hucka? Okay, Gary also wants to put a 5G moratorium. And then Barbara Hucka, she's probably not here either, but she wants to put a 5G moratorium also. That's it for public comment.
Thank you, Linda. Aaron and Rachel, so the end is closed to the public, we can respond, and part of what I wanted to maybe ask about is the moratorium comment, and then just in general, the idea that when we do have stuff on the agenda, we don't want to do any speculating, we don't want to say maybe this or maybe that, so that's why it's so important. So this consultant, this legal consultant for the 5G stuff, there's no point in meeting until that person, that consultant group has the answers, because otherwise we'll just be wondering, and does that have to do with Arizona, or, you know, I mean, it's just, there's a lot going on. So that I can't see doing before the 6th. And then with the homelessness thing, it's kind of, you know, we've got legal aspects to that. We've got, we just have a lot of resources that we want to get. But the other thing, and I don't know if we're allowed to even talk about this, is that whether there were anything pending for the 5G. Because as far as I knew, there weren't, you know, active applications or anything. So that might help with the idea that we can wait and get the good information. But would you address that moratorium?
I can. I'll reiterate what I said the last time. And Mr. Myers was the first speaker during the call to the public and quoted what I said, that the council is welcome to adopt a moratorium on 5G facilities or on certain wireless facilities. It will not have a legal effect of pausing a shot clock. So what I want to make clear is that under federal law and state law, there are shot clocks which say once a municipality receives an application for a wireless facility, you have X number of days to approve it. Under state law, in the right-of-way for small cell facilities, it's 20 days. If you don't respond to it within 20 days, it's deemed approved by operation of law. That's in the statute. Under federal law, they have similar guidelines and similar timetables. So we can adopt a moratorium, that's fine. But I want to reiterate that I don't want there to be an expectation that it's going to pause the operation of federal or state law. It cannot do that. So that's the best response and the clearest response that I can possibly give, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Councilman?
Could we do something like this resolution or a moratorium, even though it, like you said, it won't stop the shot clock, just so that the word is out that we're seriously taking the residents' initiative?
Absolutely. If you want to adopt a moratorium, recognizing that it won't have legal effect to pause the approval period under federal and state law, you can do so.
How is this town, if this is true, how is this town able to do this resolution then? And maybe that's too much for this meeting.
And I don't know what legal advice they received. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes there. Maybe they did the same thing that is being suggested that we do here, right? Doesn't mean that it was something that had any legal force or effect.
Is that in the state of Arizona?
It's Connecticut. It
Okay.
won't make a legal difference, Mayor.
Okay, thanks.
I have one other question or comment. Somebody brought up the crime issue in this town, and I think we've given some direction for our Traffic Safety Committee to expand their role and to help deal with some of these things. So that's something that's being considered right now. Is that right, Rachel? Thank you.
Mayor, can I respond to that real briefly, and Councilmember Friedel? One of the things that I'm actually glad to hear is coming on the table. Hopefully we'll have consideration of several different policy proposals. We've heard about a couple of suggestions. Some of them are workable. Some of them are not as workable. My firm's actually been working for other municipalities engaged in this exact same conversation. So I think that for whenever this meeting is supposed to transpire, I think we'll have a lot of suggested options to bring to the table for you. This is an area where we have constitutional constraints in some respects, and there aren't easy solutions, but it's not a preemption issue. It's not an issue where nothing can be done. I mean, I think there's a number of solutions that will be available to the council. So I just wanted to let you know that from my legal perspective.
So getting back to the moratorium, is that something you need direction from this council to do, or do we need a special meeting for that? What would be the next step?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the next step would be, of course, would be for council consideration for adoption. So I'm happy to put together. It seems like there's at least one other municipality that puts something on paper, right? And I'm sure there are others that put something on paper. You could easily put something on paper and have it on the agenda for approval at the next available meeting, which I don't know why it couldn't be the next meeting in May, Rachel. But yeah, that's fine with me.
Thank you very much. Next, we have our consent agenda. Unless you'd like something removed, could I get a motion, please?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir?
I would like to remove 8C from consent.
I'm sorry, which one?
8C, the resolution with Maricopa County.
Okay, can I get a motion for A and B, please? Can I get a second, please? Second. All in favor, we'll do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Toth.
Aye.
Councilmember Grzybowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Friedel.
Aye.
Councilmember Calavianakis.
Aye.
Councilmember Skillicorn. Aye. Vice Mayor McMahon. Aye. Mayor Dickey.
Aye, thank you. So our first item then on our regular agenda is going to be the approving the intergovernmental agreement with Maricopa County for emergency operations management and disaster services. We'll have the chief come up and tell us about that. We just did, but you voted no.
Yeah, in order. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was voting to.
No, there's no vote to move an item off of the consent agenda. Okay, she approves of the consent agenda.
Okay, good. All
Thank
right.
you. All set?
Yes,
Thanks.
and then I just had one for the record. Both Councilmember Skillicorn and Councilmember Grzybowski seconded. For the record, who was first?
Her voice had traveled farther.
Okay, all right.
For that all-important second on the consent agenda. Thank you. Hi, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
You explain this IGA, please?
I've got 76 slides that we can go through that on. The IGA is something that we've had in place. I believe this is probably the third go-round on the IGA. It's with Maricopa County Department of Emergency Management it provides services throughout the year for things like the Emergency Operation Plan, the COOP plan, the County Wildfire Protection Plan, a number of other training opportunities. It also allows us to have a voice when there's a declared emergency. If we had not been part of MCDEM, and I believe that all the Valley cities are, and tribal nations are part of the IGA, it will provide for us when the state, or if the feds declare an emergency, the state declares an emergency, then the county declares an emergency. We're all part of that as an IGA partner. If we're not an IGA partner with Maricopa County, we would have to fight for those funds that were available during an emergency on our own as a sole entity beside the county. So our ARPA money, our CARES money, all of that came through that, any of the Maricopa County Public Health pod point of distribution sites that we might do, our vaccine sites that we did during COVID, our ability to have strategic national stockpile supplies delivered to us, we're all part of that. Over the last 5 years of the IGA that is currently expiring in the end of June, we spent about $13,000 in those IGA membership fees. This one is slated to go for 10 years because there's no change in who the members are. It's kind of been the same for almost 20 years, and there's very little change as that moves forward. The cost increases are incidental. I think the projected cost over the next 10 years will be a little bit more than $30,000, but that works out to about $3,000 a year for all the services that Maricopa County would provide for us as being an IGA partner. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Chief. One of the reasons I pull this off is, I wanted to see what we get for our $25,000. Some of these things really sound like they should just be natural and being part of the county. I'm a little shocked that we have to spend $25,000 to have access to natural disaster relief and federal government disaster. It's just a little surprising that, and we effectively, it is very clear here. I mean, it's just a very simple IGA. It doesn't have any details of what we get. Is there a response team? Is there a hazmat team that's up 24/7? There's no details here, and it's just. We all want emergency response. We all want to be part of those programs, right? But it's just shocking to me that there's not much detail here, and they're asking $25,000 for it. And it is only 5 years, not 10.
I believe it is a 10-year IGA. The previous one was 5 years. The one that we're asking to renew is 10 years, and it's $25,000 would be probably over $30,000 in total over the next 10 years. But emergency management and emergency response are slightly separate items. The emergency management comes into, it is a larger piece of what's going on. Emergency response would be if we have a hazmat spill here, we would get an emergency or a hazmat team here from local fire departments, bring them in. That's separate from what the emergency management is. The emergency management process through the county is that in order to have a voice on the bigger items that come down, COVID is an example, it all starts through the county. And the members that are in Maricopa Department of Emergency Management, the other cities in the valley, they are part of that. They get the bigger piece of the pie because they're involved in that. As part of the state statute, we have to have an emergency operation plan. That plan has to be submitted to the county. That plan then gets submitted to the state. Then the state would adopt that. And in order for us to be eligible for FEMA funds as they become available, or any other government emergency management funds that are available, we have to be part of that organization. Doesn't mean that we could not save the $25,000. We would be on our own to go through that process. And again, we'd be going up against the other 26, 27 and the tribal communities that are part of McDem Emergency Management IGA currently, we'd be going against that on our own. So we're fighting against the rest of the valley to try to get additional funds. An example would have been that the Strategic National Stockpile funds supplies would have been available to us. There would have been more of an incurred cost to us than what the $3,000 that we had spent last year on the IGA fee. So that was all kind of inclusive in that. I can give you a more detailed breakdown of everything, but the Emergency Operation Plan is an integral part of Arizona Department of Emergency Management as the county plan. The county Wildfire Protection Plan is a bigger part of the county plan that goes to the state. The COOP, which we have just recently completed and submitted to the county for inclusion in their COOP plan, is the Continuity of Operations Plan. If we had a local disaster that wiped out things, we're now, being an IGA partner, it would allow us to take part in some of the contracts that the county has. If we go to the county first because we have severe flooding here, as an IGA member, we can go to the county, ask them for services, ask them for additional equipment, ask them for resources. If the county can't supply that, then the county goes to the state. That's a small price to pay in that $3,000 a year to have all those resources at our, really at our beck and call in an emergency. It's an insurance policy to some extent because we typically do not have a lot of emergencies. But if that happens, we're now, if it's valley-wide, we would be on our own to be fighting with the county to try to give us those resources. They're going to provide those services first for the people that are in the IGA and move forward from that standpoint.
Mayor, Chief, and isn't our emergency plan already filed with the county?
It is, but it's constantly reviewed and we make revisions to it, and then that gets readopted and then resubmitted to the state. So it's a living, breathing document, the same as the Wildfire Protection Plan and the Continuity of Operations Plan.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor, the only thing I want to make a note is that our clerk pointed out that the staff report is incorrect. So may let the record reflect that the staff report is incorrect. It's 10.5. The effective date is 2033.
Yes, I saw that. Councilwoman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's actually why I turned on my light, is just to clarify whether this was a 5 or 10-year agreement. But our efficient clerk has answered that question. And so on that note, I'd like to move to adopt Resolution 2023-12.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Grzybowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Fidel.
Aye.
Councilmember Kalavianakis.
Aye.
Councilmember Skillicorn.
Aye.
Councilmember Toth.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Mayor Dickey.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Dave. Our next item is regarding the new town logo. We'll start with a report from our Economic Director, Amanda Jacobs. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. So here to talk about the new logo that council unanimously approved on March 21st. Right before the motion, Councilmember Kalavianakis requested, could we do a minor tweak? So again, if you'll look at your screens, on top is the approved option A, variation 3, which again was approved. And then 1 week later, on March 28th, we made some modifications. So again, if you'll see that dark blue line, you'll see that the consultant straightened that out. And then the mayor requested that, again, with the approved option A, variation 3, that we modify the roundness and oval. And so hopefully you'll see that that was also corrected. Again, the consultant did do some modifications to the mountain, decrease them a bit, and then added some sunshine, because we see a lot of sunshiny days. And so during that meeting, I had mentioned to council that if we could not fulfill those requests, you would hear from me, just for the public's benefit. Council never heard from me because we made the corrections. And so we began the implementation process. I want to add, so over the last couple of weeks, there's been some misinformation, and so just want to take the opportunity to clarify. So in my staff reports in January and March, I thought I made it clear, but 3 times a charm, the town seal is going nowhere. The seal will remain. What staff requested back in January was a logo to target, market new people, and with some of your direction on appealing to young professionals. We respected council's opinion back in January. There was not a consensus to move. Maybe we're being too, modern. So we sought council feedback. And so what you see is based on direction we received on March when you guys approved it, but also in private to include the mountains, because you'll remember affectionately, Councilmember Friedel referred to the original logo as a fancy napkin holder. And so we've added the mountains, we've modified the fountain. And so on April 4th, Councilmember Calavianakis did request to bring this back. There was a second from Councilmember Skillicorn and a third from Councilmember Friedel. So we're here just to get a little bit more direction. And again, originally when this was posted, I believe on Thursday, it was for a little bit more direction. That was modified, so council, if they wish to do so, can take action. And so we will be listening and can help with any type of motions. And as always, there's always options. So with that, Madam Mayor.
Thanks very much. Council member?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Amanda. Great work, as always. As promised, the updates were made, and that, excuse me, that one in the middle with the sun, I think, is really lovely. Looks like our fountain. Looks like something that I hope you would be proud to use in a presentation about our town. I, of course, also love the town seal. I thought it was there. It's not. The town seal. I was like, right over here. It's not there. I made that up. I, of course, love our town seal, so I'm glad that that's sticking around as well. But wonderful work on this. I think it looks great, and those were the updates that we requested, and now they're here. So thank you.
I think it's fantastic. I thought it was great before, but honestly, I love the change of the spray. And a reminder that one of the conversations we've had at every one of your meetings is that the colors are there, very neutral colors, just so that we can see what it is. Colors may change based on what it's put on, whether it's a note card or letterhead or maybe a shirt, whatever. So I'm just saying that so that we all know. But I love it. I think it's fantastic. I appreciate the extra effort that you guys put in.
Mayor, Director, so when was this originally approved to go ahead and start the logo process?
So Councilmember Skillicorn, can you clarify?
I can
what you
answer
mean?
that.
Okay.
If you're talking about like where this all came from in the first place, that's we had a retreat in February last year. Council that was there, we discussed having a logo, actually a branding, for purposes of attracting, like you said, for tourism, for kind of honing in something that would help economic development, help the businesses, help tourism. And so there was quite a bit of discussion. And in fact, I wasn't like one of the most, ardent proponents of it because I thought we have a brand and it's the fountain. But after seeing what some of these other cities were doing and noticing Tempe and some of them, they're just, it's like there, you see it. And then we started talking about U of A, and you can tell the font, immediately they're talking U of A. So won me over, and Mike was a little reluctant too, but in the end, unanimously wanted to go ahead with this process. And the process included not just, printing some, drawing something out on a napkin. I mean, the people that came, they were part of, I think there were 6 applicants. It was the unanimously approved to be in the budget. So we had the retreat, we had the budget last June, unanimously approved, $20,000. Went out for bid, got the people to come in. They did this big survey, so they got a feel for what was important, and I think what came out was natural nature, scenery, mountains, everything that we thought, and obviously the fountain. So they brought some stuff to us. They presented to many of us a couple times. Amanda had us all come in and see the different choices. We all picked. That's how we ended up with what we voted on. And I think at that point, everybody was okay with one. And then Brenda, you had another idea. So you came in, I think a couple days before, suggested something similar to the one that we unanimously approved at our last meeting. So and again, it's for branding, and there was more work done that we haven't even gotten to yet. So this has become a little bit more than I think we all thought it was going to be. And now, if I'm hearing, if everybody looks at these and sees something that they can agree with, like what you just mentioned, then we can move on. And that's why I made it into an action item, so that maybe if something was here that was appealing to everyone, we would move on, but it wouldn't involve any extra expense to the company that came up with these. So that's kind of the history of where it came from.
Thank you so much, Mayor. May I ask the director a couple more questions? Of course. Thank you so much. Amanda, Director, what is your vision for using this, and what are your projected costs and budget for implementing it?
So, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Skillicorn, initially we're thinking, and again, this is going to be part of the implementation process, which we stopped after April 4th, is looking at the website, the print media that we're already doing, again, to target. So, for instance, to site selectors, it'll be added on there. We're considering business cards. There'll be a new PowerPoint template, and some of that will be for myself. Because again, as I've mentioned, the seal, yes, we love it, but when we are up against our competitors, it's a little stuffy and old. I apologize, no disrespect. As I've mentioned before, there will be no additional cost. This third phase that we're in, that we have now temporarily stopped, will be included. So these things that I'm talking to you about, we will get those templates from the consultant. So no additional cost. Again, you guys saw last week the fiscal year 24 budget. There are no requests from myself for any additional branding. It's $20,000. We are not requesting to expend any additional taxpayer dollars on this.
And Mayor, Director, now if we're printing business cards, if we're printing out advertisements, there has to be a cost to that, right?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Skillicorn, yes, so those are already budgeted. So for instance, let's just take the business cards. When you guys have finished distributing all your cards, you request new cards. That's a cost that's in our office supply budget. So there will be no additional cost. So it's just kind of slapping on the new logo.
Madam Mayor, Director, so let's say there's no additional cost. Come on, we know better than that. We see through this. I make a motion to suspend this logo and exclude any additional costs and end this now.
I would second that.
So the motion is to suspend this activity?
I still have more discussion if you want.
Clarification, please. What is the motion for, to stop the whole process, stop a whole new logo, or just stop this tonight?
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman, I think it's appropriate because of public outcry that this is not, that have no public support. And I am not a fan of moving forward on this, and I'm not a fan of spending any taxpayer resources on going forward. We already have a logo. I say we use that.
Oh, okay, so when we have our presentation and we can ask questions, then we have to go to comment cards, so I'm going to allow comment cards right now.
I still have time for discussion, correct?
First, we have Crystal Kavanaugh.
Good evening. Even though I've been a little more preoccupied and focused on the outpatient treatment centers trying to go into the wrong zoning, I do have some thoughts on the logo. And would I have spent the $20,000 to get the very mediocre and limited options that were presented to you? No, but it happened, so now what? I do believe that this current council, for the most part, cares whether money is wasted, so I do think that must have been why you went ahead and voted yes on the uninspiring logo. However, I think that when we do pause and revisit this, you'll realize the best route is to toss out all of those uninspiring logos that were presented by that company. And that company chose those options after reaching out to our community using a free service called SurveyMonkey that actually any one of us could have done to get a feel for a branding direction in Fountain Hills. And surprise, surprise, it included a fountain. And guess what? That is indeed our very recognizable brand here. So we're not limited to just that, of course, but not many other towns or cities can use it, so why fight it? Some of you had mentioned you wanted a more modern logo, and that was definitely not achieved with the new ones, nor would it have been achieved satisfactorily with that initial napkin holder one. I personally like the fountain on the wall right behind you. I actually see it as having very modern edges. And what is wrong with using the interior of our existing town seal, which includes a nice fountain, mountains, and a moon for our dark sky community? Simple and recognizable, using nice colors. I mean, even for young professionals. Even though the town has already spent the $20,000 to get the lukewarm logo selection, there's no reason to go full speed ahead now with new expenses, which will be involved in rebranding websites, merchandise, products, print media, etc. So we don't want to throw even more money towards this uninspiring graphic. You may just have to chalk it up to a bad investment, a mistake, and look for other ways to fix it. And I say go back to the drawing board in a fiscally responsible way. It'll cost less in the long run. We can either use the interior of the current seal or spend a tiny bit more money elsewhere and hopefully achieve a great logo for less than $500 or less than $2,000 or at a maximum $5,000. Nowhere near $20,000, that's for sure. Because you can reach out to our local sign and graphics companies, a college design class, or an online artist website such as Fiverr, where freelance artists vie for your business and create multiple logos to choose from at a very small cost. So we are Fountain Hills, a location of beauty and destination, and we just deserve more than settling for a logo, in my opinion. Thank you.
Next, we have Ed Stizza. Now you can talk about the logo.
Good evening. Wait a minute. Can we spend a couple $100 and get an extension on the mic? So a couple things. I have a question that Amanda brought up, and that is, are you going to use this logo on all their town cards? Because that's what you said. Oh, well, she's going to answer
I'm
the
assuming
question.
that was, as we go through them, then the new ones would have a new logo on them.
So it would have the new logo. So the seal that's on your cards now will go away, which is the official seal of the town. So that's what you're going to do? Okay, because I pass those cards out all the time.
I'll ask Councilwoman to respond.
I just wanted to give the chance for Amanda to clarify. Was that just an example of needing to reorder an item?
Ed, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Toth, that is an example. So again, during the implementation, we will still have those conversations. I am flexible, open-minded, and so it's an example. It's not set in stone. You're welcome.
So that's that answer. Thank you, Amanda. So the next thing, obviously, they worked a little bit harder, so that's nice to see. Still not there. Still needs a little tweaking. And why we're using the first list of Pantone colors to describe this, it's beyond me. I mean, why aren't we throwing in some colors now? And that way, people could possibly look at that and have a better opinion of it. There is not one person over the past, now this isn't out there yet, right? As far as the 3 logos that came back, right? So, so definitely a vast improvement, but it still needs a little more tweaking. So, and it would be nice to see some real colors, okay? These are right off the first color palette of the Pantone list. So let's see what's real and how you're really going to use it. And then maybe some of that vibrancy will come out. You can do a few little more tweaks. You know, it certainly displays the fountain better. So that's one good thing in your lily pad, Councilwoman Toth. So, so it's getting there, but why are we rushing? No reason to rush. Is there? Are we losing money by rushing? Are we making more money? This is a big decision. And that's what I tried to say each time. You know, so just take a little more time. That's all. And get the public happy, because the public was not happy at all. So I can tell you that. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Go Suns.
Okay, the next are just a written comment by Matthew Corrigan that he opposes the logo. He likes retaining the existing logo. Laurie Treller is against the town logo. And Liz Gildersleeve, she wrote a statement, but she's against the logo. And that's it for public comment.
Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Where do I begin? I think you would have to be completely tone deaf to live in Fountain Hills and to think there's any support for any variation of this. I'd like to agree with Crystal Kavanaugh. The lack of options, to me, and you said that tonight, and it just rang true. We were presented what was essentially the same thing in various iterations. We didn't get like 5 different logo designs, and then let's wind it down, let's wind it down. We were basically given one and said, you're gonna accept this. We did vote unanimously. And a very wise man once told me that, Brenda, occasionally you're gonna make mistakes. And when you do, you gotta own them and you gotta fix them. And so I'm trying to fix a mistake that I made, and I'll definitely own up to it. If they would have used this town seal as the inspiration for the logo, I think it would have been approved and we'd probably be implementing it right now, but they didn't do that. And I just feel like the Gordley group from Tucson just doesn't understand Fountain Hills. They don't get us. And so I don't like this. And then I shouldn't disagree with the constituent, Ed, but it's not tweakable, okay? The strategic plan calls for an effective brand. This is not an effective brand, so I think we're violating the very strategic plan that we're supposed to uphold. People have asked me, Brenda, this is not a big thing, it's a little concern. Why are you so wrapped up in this? Well, there is a flag that's been flown incorrectly in Fountain Hills, and the citizens came up to me and said, Brenda, that's an improperly displayed American flag. Okay, that was worth my time. A lot of people might think that's a little deal. It wasn't to me. A pothole on a street there's only 6 houses on, that might be a little deal, but no, there's 6 people that live in that street. We've got to fix that street. And so whether it's important or not is just a matter of perspective. What's important to you might not be important to me and vice versa. community branding, and I'm sure you know this, Amanda, and I think we're all trying to just get a correct brand, and that's why I'm having this conversation tonight. It's become the new economic development model, more significant than the value of financial incentives, giving your town, city, community a brand that represents its values, its beliefs, and will ultimately attract people, attract businesses. Community branding defines neighborhoods, revitalizes districts, packs restaurants, creates an economic buzz. Does anybody think this logo will do any of those things? I don't think so. Based on the amount of input that I've received from the public, which has been voluminous, if we vote for this, we are violating the very public trust that I think that we're sworn to uphold. Why is the public's trust declining in government all throughout our country? Because citizens don't feel like they're being listened to anymore. The consultant and the expert classes have seemed to have driven out common sense in governments and replaced it with what the government thinks is the right for you. And they will defer on their consultants and their experts to say how wrong you are and how what you're thinking is not good to think, okay? I think that I listen to the people, and that's what I heard, and that's why I'm voting with Alan's motion to terminate the agreement with the Gordley Group and to terminate this logo going forward. When it was published in the Fountain Hills Times, I had an outpour I really didn't expect after I had voted for it. The people were angry that we spent $20,000. There's no doubt about that. The people, they wanted a new brand, but they wanted a new brand that we could be proud of. And I don't think this is something that the people are proud of. I reached out to town forums, at stores, to restaurants, and many other gathering places. And I had my phone, and I showed everybody that logo. You like it or not? Do you like it or not? I swear I don't think anybody liked it. And a few people said it's tweakable, which I disagree with. I think this logo missed the mark. Are we going to listen to our residents and our constituents, or are we going to just tell you that don't worry, it's good, even if you don't think so? This logo has been subject to ridicule, jokes, scorn. The descriptions that come to mind are numerous. One other point that I really feel has to be made here tonight is the treatment of the Four Peaks mountain range, which I don't think they captured. Now, I've got the Four Peaks chapter of the Daughters of the Revolution. The Four Peaks is the center of their chapter. They said that the Four Peaks and the backdrop for Fountain Hills and Rio Verde is considered sacred by the Yavapai community. And so they considered this mountain range sacred, and we're tweaking it. I don't think we should be tweaking it. If somebody were to use a Christian cross and took liberties with it, and maybe the bottom was wavy or looked like a piece of lightning, I would be offended as a Christian. I think that we're doing that to the Yavapai Nation. We don't get a lot of input from them, but I have gotten input from them, and they don't like what we're doing with this emblem. And they are neighbors, and we have to respect them. What I'm asking the council tonight is to accept the fact that this is flawed, it's not a good brand, and to move on. One last argument I've heard is we've already spent the money, why waste it? Just go forward with it. We've already spent the money. I disagree with that. I reject that argument. Why throw good money after bad? If you buy a used car that's constantly in need of repairs, do you just keep throwing money at it or sell it and buy a new one? I say the money's gone, that's unfortunate, but let's open this up to the community. Let's make this a community project at the high schools, at the senior centers, and let them design the logo. We can put together an ad hoc committee, and we could go from there. They could reduce it down, bring it in front of council, and then we could vote. It would bring our town together, it'd be fun, and we could get a branding logo that truly represents our town. And so those are my thoughts on it. Thank you for the extended amount of time tonight. I appreciate it.
First and foremost, Amanda, if I'm correct, you had mentioned in the last 2 times that we've talked about the logo that the implementation would be simply as we ran out of things. So we would already be ordering those business cards. We just added that artwork onto it. Theoretically, we don't know if the business card would be the example. Sorry, Ed.
Mayor, Councilmember Toth, that's correct.
Okay.
So again, when we have an ad, let's just take, we get grant money, and some of it is dedicated to print advertising. When we're working with the graphic designer, we have to provide the content, the logo, the imagery, and so it's added on. It's that part is not an additional cost.
Thank you. So just once again to reiterate that there really is not an implementation cost besides what is included in the $20,000, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Furthermore, while we have heard, and I won't deny that we've heard a significant amount of feedback on whether or not people enjoy the logo, I take major issue with the statement that there is no support of the logo. Because even, frankly, the council members' own social media post showed people that said, yes, I like the logo. Now, were they outnumbered? Yes. However, they did exist. I think the conversation around this logo has gotten extraordinarily out of hand. This is something that, frankly, we would not normally have so much of a say in. And while I understand we all have our feedback and our preferences, and I'm sure if I drew a logo for Fountain Hills, it would look different than every other one in this room, and vice versa, right? Each of us have our own preferences and opinions, and that especially comes out when we talk about artwork. And that's what this is. And I think also that having the responsibility of attracting people to town lies solely on a logo is not an accurate depiction of what a logo does. It grabs your attention, it looks good, has our fountain, that is our brand. I fully agree with you, Madam Mayor. I suppose this is my very long way of saying that I continue to support this logo. I'm interested to see what they come up with when it comes to colors, but I think that you had this handled when it came to the feedback that we had given you. And I appreciate it, and I thank you for putting all of this extra work into this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just say ditto and leave it at that, but I'm going to go just a wee bit further. My first question is, will we place an ad to say, here is our new logo? No. I can tell by the look on your face, you don't even need to answer that if you don't want to. So to me...
No, just for the record.
Okay,
no.
So now officially it is on the record you said no. So to me, that would be the added expense that perhaps the only thing I can think of. Because like Councilwoman Toth said, I run out of business cards, which honestly I don't see me ever doing. But I run out of business cards, and I call Angela and say, order me new business cards. And she may say, do you want the town seal or do you want the new logo? I want the new logo. Whatever. So this is just a part of doing business. Also, if I remember correctly, you presented 2 distinctly different logos at the, I don't remember what day, January something or other meeting. There were 2 distinctly different logos, if I remember correctly. And we gave direction as to which one we were leaning towards. Then at the March 21st meeting, you went with that and came up with the different variations. So we did have 2 distinctly different ones to choose from at that first meeting. Then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the boring colors, for lack of a better word. This is just kind of how logos are created. They do these colors so that our eye is not distracted by our favorite color, purple, for example. If you put a purple logo up there, it almost wouldn't matter what it was, that would be my favorite logo. So this is strategically done to help us determine what we like better. Then that was all my notes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Yeah, since the theme of the night for me is correcting mistakes, let me correct one more mistake. I'd like to amend my previous statement to say that almost all the people of Fountain Hills don't like it. I shouldn't have said everybody. It's almost. So I'd just like to retract my words that everybody didn't like it. There was a slim majority that did. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur with Sharon and how this has been brought about. We all voted unanimously for it last time. In fact, I think that the suggestion for the 4 peaks was from Brenda to change from the original version, which you went to great lengths to accommodate that. We all agreed with it. I don't understand in a lot of ways why it's being brought back, especially since it was a unanimous vote, but I would like to move forward with the logo. I think that it represents our fountain and the sun, et cetera, coming up and all that. I don't think there's any insult to any women's group or the Yavapai Nation or whatever, even religious crosses. People have different ones. They're changed. They're decorated different, et cetera. It's a matter of interpretation. So thank you for all your hard work. I appreciate it.
Ms. Mayor, and just one more comment. I was the one that wanted to get the 4 peaks in there, and it wasn't done right. And according to our packet, if we want to change this current logo at all, except for the colors, it's going to cost us another $10,000 to $15,000, which just to change this thing to make it, as Ed would say, tweakable, it's going to cost us 10 to 15 grand. It's in the packet.
It says if additional changes. Sharon?
One more thing I wanted to say, and this is what I try to stress to constituents when they say they want to email me about a particular situation. What I have found in the past 2 years on a couple of months of being a council person is human nature. We all have a tendency to like one person or one ideal better. So we have a tendency to follow that person on social media, to only email that person. And I'm a big believer in, I want to know all your opinions. So when they say, Sharon, I'll send you an email, I'm like, can you please email the entire council? This is how you do it, because I want the entire council to know how you feel. I don't want to be the only one to see your thoughts. I think it's important that all 7 of us have the ability to see your thoughts, to read your thoughts. So I kind of feel like if we say something on social media, it's going to be the same kind of thing, that people are following Sharon, so it'll automatically pull up, because that's what Facebook does, is it knows who you follow and knows who you like and who you comment on, so automatically it's gonna pull up on your feed. So what I'm thinking is maybe the reason why she's getting more no's than she got yeses, because those are the people that have already liked her post or talk about to her via social media more. So again, to the thousands of fans that we have that I know watch the meeting every day, I think this is another really good example. When you have something to say to one of us, please say it to all of us so that we can all hear all sides of whatever the conversation is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Mayor. As I prepared this statement tonight and thought about this, I was very careful to not make mention of Facebook or of any Facebook polls or Facebook feedback. As a matter of fact, it's right in my notes. I said my feedback was on town forum meetings, restaurants, gas stations, et cetera, et cetera. You all heard my statement. I specifically didn't say it was from Facebook because just of what Councilwoman Grabowski's concerns were. I did not use that as a guidepost to what the people of Fountain Hills thought. I took it upon myself to go out and engage people. I thought that's the right way to do it, not just rely on a Facebook post, which is obviously going to be skewed, and you can get any result that you want. So I just want to let you know that my whole thing tonight was not based on anything more than my personal contacts and interactions with the citizens of Fountain Hills.
I think the idea that there's 25,000 people in this town, and if we tried to ask who likes what as far as art is so subjective, and Amanda, as our economic development director, did as directed, not only from going from the most recent meeting, where we unanimously told her what we wanted, but she brought to that meeting what she was directed to bring to it. And she did the same in January. And the ones in January came from the previous council seeing all these designs and honing down to, in separate groups and honing down. So there were 4 or 5, there were 6, I think, in the beginning. Then it got narrowed down. If people didn't want to spend $20,000 on branding, the time to do that was during our 4 or 5 budget meetings last year when it was there as a budget item, or before that when we spoke about this entire effort, which, like I said, lukewarm, ended up wanting to do it and feeling like it was a good thing to do. I think that Amanda should not be questioned as if when she says that they're not going to spend more money on this, that to just like say, oh, come on, like that to her is disrespectful. I don't appreciate that. I wanted to ask Hannah, since you're so close in with businesses, are there businesses that are either members or not of the chamber who are professional marketers? I shouldn't ask you this, but in other words, it's a profession. It's not a contest for high school kids. No disrespect to high school kids, but we're professional. We're a town. We're looking at a logo. We're attracting businesses. We're going out to different places, not only in the valley, but all around the state and even outside, and saying how great we are. We're in the Smithsonian Institute. We want people to give us millions of dollars to do that Discovery Center. And why would we not want to have this marketing effort that any business would likely want to have? So do you have an opinion about that, Hannah?
So this is, to be entirely clear, Councilmember Toth talking, not Chamber Toth. Just kidding. Just kidding. But Councilmember Hannah does agree that there are several marketing companies here in town. I actually did receive a comment from one who kind of floated the idea for leaving it up to students, and in full disclosure that if this was this time last year, I would be very interested in pursuing that. However, we are at this point of the process where we've already committed $20,000 to this. And like I said, I like this logo. I do not see a reason to go back and start all over. And by doing so, probably spending more money. And secondarily, I like the logo, so I want to use this one. So, sorry.
There's a motion on the table to suspend or prevent this from moving forward, and a second. Could we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Fidel.
Aye.
Councilmember Calavianakis.
Aye.
Councilmember Skillicorn.
Aye.
Councilmember Toth.
Nay.
Councilmember Grzybowski.
Nay.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Mayor Dickey.
No.
It fails 4-3.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Anybody have a motion?
Madam Mayor,
She'll make the motion.
I apologize, but I don't actually know if we need to do a motion since technically this was already approved. I mean, is there anything really to vote on?
Well, which design?
Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that, I move to approve I guess it didn't technically have a title, the middle one. Yes, so modified option A, variation 3.
Middle.
The one in the middle.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, Amanda.
Aaron and I are kind of looking at each other. You guys don't need to make a motion.
That was I mean, you directed to make these changes. The changes were made. It's done.
Yes,
I mean, if you want to, you're like, fine,
yeah,
but you don't need to.
Basically, I received my direction March 21st, got to keep up with the dates. And so we will move forward. And so again, like you've seen different variations, those 3 are different variations. And so again, the blue, white, or it's like a solid
Well, the middle
black.
one didn't have 4 peaks, or one of them didn't have 4 peaks. One of them just had separated mountains. Where did it go?
If you want it for clarity, go ahead and do it, and we'll be done with it.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the table for that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please, we'll do a roll call. I'm always doing that. No.
Okay, Councilmember Calavianakis.
Hold on one second. I'm sorry, we need some clarification.
Okay.
The motion to approve number 3, the middle one.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes, on the screen. Okay. All right, Councilmember Calavianakis.
I'll abstain.
Councilmember Skillicorn.
No.
Councilmember Toth.
Aye.
Councilmember Guzbowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Fidel.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Mayor Dickey.
Aye.
It passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And so again, we'll continue to move forward. Again, we had pushed the pause
I need
button.
new cards. No. I don't.
We'll move forward. And again, I told you about 30 to 45 days, so we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next item is adoption of Town of Fountain Hills Public Art Master Plan. Rachel?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, Kevin Snipes is going to be presenting this item. Just a little review that our Public Art Committee is not a directly appointed committee from the council. It is an outside working group that staff liaises with in order to procure and care for our public art. The recommendations that are in your packet tonight originated from that committee in order to modify how we fund that program. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So I've been asked to present this on behalf of the Public Art Committee as they are doing a pump house pilot project ribbon cutting tonight for the new art that's being put down at Fountain Park. So their statement reads as follows. The Public Art Committee is recommending eliminating the option of developers to match the percent for art donation with public art located on their sites and having a monetary donation to the Public Art Fund held by the town as the only option. A few projects in the past have not been executed as presented by the developers. Taking in mind that there are artistic parameters to consider, the Public Art Committee does not feel that the end result or the processes followed met the requirements outlined in the Public Art Master Plan. The Public Art Committee feels that the check and balances of the current plan is not adequate, and therefore eliminating the option for public art on site would allow for greater oversight of these funds by the Public Art Committee and town staff. And with that, I'll take any questions and do my best to answer them.
Madam Mayor, and I actually don't know if it's going to be a town manager or a director here, because I know town manager did the report. But as I'm reading through here, I see the changes. Of course, I see that it's crossed out. Provide public artwork, and its only option is to make the donation. Doesn't the art committee actually approve, yea or nay, the donation, the art donation?
Correct. Yes, they do.
So, Mayor and staff, if they approve it, I don't see the problem. If they have a ability to approve it or not allow it, I don't see the reason for this change. And I've seen developers donate art, and it's been great, and it's something that complements that their investment in town. Whereas if it's an outside body that is going to be doing that determination, and they're only making a donation and a monetary donation, it may not complement their design. It may not complement the feel, and we might get a situation where they don't like the logo or whatever that is they have to contribute to. And because the art committee has the final say if the piece of art is acceptable or not, I don't see a need for this.
Madam Mayor, council member, so part of the discussion that's happened within the committee is that they feel that what they've approved isn't the final product that has come to fruition. And so that's where their discrepancy is with the existing plan that's in place.
Rachel?
I was just going to add to that, so to your point, Councilmember, that they do have the approval process, and ultimately, so does this body. When they make a recommendation to accept a piece of art, it also comes here. So there are two levels of approval that it goes through. So I just want to make that clarification.
I don't want to give an example, but I've actually been to one of the art ribbon cuttings, blow-offs, introductions, whatever you want to call it, and walked away, and my husband would be like, "You look surprised." And I'd be like, "Yeah, that's a little different than we expected." So I totally get the vibe of where the art committee is going, and I appreciate that, because as artists do, sometimes when we sketch something out on paper and we go to put it together, we get a little more creative and it turns out different. So that, Councilmember Skillicorn, I think is what they're trying to prevent, where we all approved this particular drawing and the artist got a little more creative and it came back different. And it does happen probably more often than we think it does.
Madam Mayor and Councilwoman, I kind of wonder if maybe the more appropriate step is, instead of requiring only a monetary donation, maybe there's some sort of final approval or some sort of check and balance that, this isn't what we approved. This isn't going to cut it. If the Arts Commission and ultimately the council disagrees with the final product, I wonder if that's a better solution. And I don't know how to add the language for that right this moment, but it's kind of curious other people's opinions.
Something that Councilmember Skillicorn just mentioned actually really interested me, of whether, I don't know if you would know this or not, but has public art considered, or is it something that they could do where there would be some sort of fine if the sculpture looks reasonably different? How?
If they got too creative?
Yes, if they got too creative. I'm trying to figure out the right way to word that, where obviously sometimes an artist might sketch something out and it just doesn't work the way that it was sketched out, and there needs to be changes made, and I want to be understanding of that, first of all. But if it's significantly different, where Councilmember Grabowski is walking away going, "Oh, what was that?" Is there anything to hold accountability there?
Madam Mayor, council member, so the way that it's written right now is it's supposed to hold up the certificate of occupancy if it's what's put in is not approved of. Doing that becomes a serious issue for the town and for everybody involved if you try and stop people from moving into a development because of their art. And so that's another step in what the issue is with the artwork going onto the property, is that if we're going to say no one can move into this development until you change your artwork, and it takes them 6 months for the artist to redo it, or is the town really going to tell that developer that they can't let anybody move into their development for that 6 months?
When I read through this, the thought going through my mind was, A, we're taking away maybe some flexibility from the developers. And B, what would be the reason for having all that cash sit in that fund? Is there something we don't know about?
Madam Mayor, council members, the thing that I believe that the Public Art Committee is going to tell you is that this would allow them to select art to put throughout the town and to maintain the existing art. And frankly, we have a lot of art pieces that are starting to get older, and they're going to start needing more and more maintenance. And so the funding would then be put back into also repairing old artwork, that instead of having to decommission it, as we've had to do with some of our pieces.
We haven't had to decommission that much. I don't know that I'm in favor of this suggested change.
And I was on the council when we adopted the fee, 2007, I think. And to me, the reason for it was you're putting in a building, you're putting into an office building or whatever. So this is your way of making that project better and nicer, whatever, like the car one, you know? But this seems just like another fee then. I mean, I'm not in favor of just an out-and-out fee for putting up a development. So if you're gonna put up a building and we want, you know, our town to be a certain kind of thing, so you put a building up, we'd like something there. There's got to be a different way to work out a way for it to be what was expected, the right value, the right materials, all that kind of stuff, which is pretty baked into the public art policy anyway. So I'm not in favor of this either, and I don't know whether that blows everything else up. I could think there were a couple other changes, but I just as soon, instead of trying to go through each of them, just kind of push this back and have a rework to solve that problem. Jerry?
Mayor, I think also part of the development is a statement piece outside of that development. It finishes the project. And I think, didn't we a few years ago reduce the fee? Mm-hmm. So, you know,
Madam Mayor, and also as a counterpoint to this, like if we withhold a certificate of occupancy, that's a bad thing. But that also means that the developer needs to keep their artists on a short leash, so that what Councilwoman was talking about, that they go, you know, a little too wild. I still wonder if I'm not going to support this tonight unless someone amends this motion or something. But I kind of wonder about going back and just taking out the part that it's only monetary, and allow some veto. You know, let the art community have a veto on this, and let developers know. Don't let it get too wild. And I think that would be more appropriate. And, you know, ultimately, we're open for business, but we also want to something that builds value and character to our town.
I just wanted to reiterate, I suppose, a couple of the points that have been made. First of all, that this does kind of make it just a fee, and second, that it takes away some of that flexibility for a developer. While I love public art, and I hope that they get more money, I really do, and I hope that we're able to bring back things like art walks and everything, I just don't see this as the way to do it. So I'm not sure if, again, if this would be a motion, or if this is a motion to table, or if we just kind of let them know they need to fix it and send it back.
Yeah, well, it looks like there's a few different parts of what's being proposed. There's artwork donation procedures, which I haven't heard any discussion about. It doesn't sound like there's much objection. But then there's the % for public art requirement, and then it looks like there's a C of O portion. So if the council wished to make a motion to approve just those portions that they're okay with, we can do that, and then just not approve the percent for, the modification to the percent for art requirement.
Sure. So in that case, I would like to, yes, so moved. I'm not even going to try. So
I
moved.
hope I did it okay. That's good.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay, Councilmember Skillicorn.
Yes.
Councilmember Toth.
Aye.
Councilmember Grzybowski.
Aye.
Councilmember Friedel. Aye. Councilmember Kalavianakis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McMahon. Mayor Dickey.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our last action item is kind of two things. So as far as the legislative stuff, they're not working right now, and there really isn't that much of a change. There's just pretty much the same attempts to do what we've, the zoning stuff and the municipal tax exemptions and things like that. So, but there's not anything happening because they're not meeting this week, because they have to appoint somebody else to be in the House. So the other part, though, was the part with going, if you had any suggestions for the legislative agenda for next year, and then the members of our council who are on various committees, but it doesn't have to be a proposal to go to one of those committees, but basically, if anybody had any idea that they would want to present from the town of Fountain Hills to the league, that these policy committees would look at them, and if they wanted them, they would recommend them then to go to executive committee and such. So did anybody have any ideas of anything, either on your own committee or just in general, that you would like to see forwarded to the league? Nobody had anything? Okay. Do you? No? I think the ever-present 1487, hoping to try to slim that down or get rid of it, which is the one, obviously, that allows any legislator to question anything that a town council or city council does and put a halt to it and bring it to the Attorney General. And it's really a very flawed thing that's been happening for a while. So that would be the only, and that's long-standing. And then the other one is the state statute, 161019, which is about the political, not sign-free zones, but that's in there, but it's the political signs and how that just does not comply with the Supreme Court. It didn't last year, didn't the year before, didn't the year before that. So I would appreciate bringing that one forward. It would actually probably be to General Administration, Human Resources, and Election, which is the only one we don't have somebody on. But if, really what it is would be to be asking for this statute to be brought into alliance so that it would comply with federal law. Because right now, every time there's an election, every city is faced with not being able to comply with the state law and the federal law at the same time. So I wouldn't mind, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind putting that forth. It's not a new idea at all, and it doesn't favor one thing over the other. It just asks for them to put us not in the position of every year having to figure out which law we comply with. And again, the reason for that is the state law says that the cities have to allow political signs in rights-of-way during elections. The federal law says you cannot make laws based on content. And that's literally a law based on content. So they can either change the state law or they can say, I don't know. I mean, there's probably legal remedies for this, but nobody's tried it yet. Nobody seems to be able to do that. So, Brenda, did you have any opinion on that?
I think you covered it very well.
Well, I'll bring it forward. I don't think it would go anywhere, but I'll see, I'll put it on, I'll fill out the form and see. There's 2 meetings for these committees, and so if we didn't get it in, I think the deadline's Friday, but I could do that. I don't think there's any harm done with it. Okay. Thank you. There's really no news on Prop 400. That the bill that's there is bringing in other things, and it's really difficult to know what to do with that one. So we're still waiting. Any other items to discuss? The next to last item is our council discussion direction to town manager. I think we kind of took care of some of that after the calls to the public. And then the next one would be the future agenda items. So did you have anything for?
Yeah, for future agenda.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I guess tonight I want to put something on the future agenda and maybe just have a conversation about the process. As we recall, a couple of weeks ago, I did ask for the anti-homeless encampment ordinance and the aggressive panhandling ordinance to be placed on the agenda for tonight. The reasons were given and discussion was made why that wasn't done. I know I'm a little confused. That's why I wanted to just bring this up for conversation tonight. I mean, earlier this year, Councilwoman Toth addressed this issue, and we revised our rules of procedure to include that the requested items would be placed on the next available agenda, and we rewrote the rules of procedure as a result. Since our last meeting, we were informed that the staff was assigned to work on these 2 ordinances and a future agenda be determined. And I guess what I'm trying to flesh out here tonight is I think it's crucial for the staff to know how the council wants to go forward on these important issues. I believe it's imperative before the staff will spend many hours on this anti-homeless, the panhandling, and the encampment bill, that they were to get guidance by your town council, which would in turn give the town manager guidance, and then it would give the staff guidance. And what exactly do we want for these 2 ordinances? And I think that's what's been missing. It seems that the task of writing the new panhandling and homeless ordinance without guidance by the town council is kind of putting the cart in front of the horse. I think we have to tell them conversationally what we would like to see, and maybe get just a discussion on the next council. So then we can again have a direction to staff, because the way we're doing it right now, staff could be working on erecting a homeless shelter, which might just fix the whole problem. We will just put them in a homeless shelter. I'm not saying that's an exaggeration, okay? But I'm saying their direction could be great, and I think we should try to hone in exactly what the majority of the council would like to see, so when staff works on it, they would have some guidance from us, who ultimately has been elected by the people to represent the people.
So I think I can respond a little bit right now, and you tell me if what's off. But so I sent you an email, and first because Alan sent me an email about it also, about wanting to do it. Didn't think that there'd be any state statutes that were going to change anything, because that was my original thought, was there were definitely some bills floating around in there. And I thought, let's see what they come up with, which should be in the next month or so. And in case it ended up being a law that we would have to adopt anyway, so why go crazy making something up and then we'd have to change it. Then after that, it became obvious that this is a complex issue, and what I did not want it to turn into was us saying, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, before knowing what the parameters are legally for sure, because there's really no point in that, and then we just keep talking about what we want, and there could be restrictions on it. So I thought June, this isn't, it's not an emergency time-wise in the next couple of months or whatever, but we want to have the good information in front of us so we can discuss what solutions are available to us, and we can't get that overnight. And having a meeting where we just kind of say what we want, and if it's not legal or doable or whatever, I don't see the point in that. Doesn't mean you don't say it, but once we have the facts in front of us, then we can do that. And so I agreed to move it up and not wait till the session and all that. But, you know, May 2nd, we're going to have Morningside on here or whatever, Mountainside. I mean, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah,
So I think June is fine.
Ms. Mayor, I do appreciate that, what you're saying, but, you know, just listening to our guest speakers tonight and the call to the public, when I made this motion about homeless encampments 2 weeks ago, right now it almost seems prescient that all of a sudden we find a homeless encampment next to the high school. It seems like an issue, and some speakers even addressed that tonight. Why are we waiting on this? You know, we've got to get you guys working on this. And so, you know, again, just listening to the public, I think this is something that, although it might not be an emergency, I think it's something that's very important to our constituents. And our lack of moving forward in an expedited fashion might, again, be read as a signal that this isn't very important to the town members, to us, and I don't want to lead that impression.
Aaron, I don't know how much we can go forward, but I would like to allow Councilwoman Toth and Vice Mayor to speak.
Of course.
I'm not speaking on this item. I just didn't want to lose my
Oh,
turn.
okay. Okay, Vice Mayor?
Tonight we heard Maricopa County Sheriff's Department saying the procedures that they went through, they gave notice, they're enacting within the law, they're acting as fast as they can to take care of that encampment. They're doing it within the law. In addition, Aaron, on things like this, I mean, I think it needs some legal research instead of coming, you know, I need their parameters that we usually get, that we can look at that. It could be legal. We could have a basis for starting the discussion versus speculation, and then go from there. That's how I would prefer. I think that you need more than like 2 weeks to do that, I would assume, et cetera. I think what you said about what's coming before the legislature, et cetera, I think, you know, we're at the end of April, we have May, and then we have June. That's a reasonable time period. We're not ignoring what's going on in our community. We're not treating it like it's not, you know, really important. It is. So I really think that given some things that I want to look at or research, I'd like to keep it at June. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just to address that briefly, when I was asking to get this on the agenda, I wasn't up here to speculate. I had been working with our State Senator John Kavanaugh on draft language, which I would have presented, and I also have looked at the Glendale ordinance, and so I was actually going to present what has been done and what's working around the state. I wasn't just going to pontificate and speculate on what we should do.
I didn't mean to insult you and say that. There was a lot of comments, public comments made. Some were, you could deem speculation or whatever. Just want something more with parameters and legal parameters that we have to work with in order to formulate if we're going to go forward with an ordinance, et cetera.
Just piggybacking on all that stuff, I ran into Jenny, the mayor, right after I got the email that said that we were postponing it or whatever the email said. And I thanked her because I feel like we need to include a social worker, our emergency response people, like our crisis response team, the sheriff's office, and the EMS, also Meg and maybe the New Leaf people. And if Councilwoman, you have, I believe you said Glendale's ordinance. If you have that and can give it to the town staff so that they have something to work on for us and that they can present to us, because I kind of would like to see that kind of stuff before a meeting so that I can come in better prepared as opposed to being handed it at the meeting. So thank you for trying to loop all those people in that I said really fast.
I think what Brenda was saying, correct me if I'm wrong, she had a baseline for us, and I don't know why we need all those other people weighing in on our ordinance. It's for our town. So if she had a baseline, something to start with, I think that was part of the discussion. I didn't think she was going to unload that on us and then say, this is going to be our ordinance. So we've got to start somewhere. And like she said, there's a lot of people that are concerned about this. Why not get a discussion started on it? It doesn't mean we're going to adopt Glendale's ordinance either, but it's a baseline, something for us to look at anyway.
So I was going to at least suggest, I think I understand the desire and the direction of the council is to see, and certainly from the public, to see something on this sooner rather than later. When that actually gets on an agenda, maybe we may not be able to resolve that today because it depends on how fast I can work to advise you all on what the proper and legal courses of action should be and present you with options, with several options that you can consider for adoption, right? So please bear with me. I'll provide you that information. Brenda, I'm happy to connect with you on a couple of fundamental underlying issues that I have with Glendale that may be relevant, that will be relevant to the council's consideration. I would like to have that conversation with you all in executive session and just to circulate a memo with research that, frankly, some of which is already done, right? It's just a matter of compiling it and making it tailored to you and for what our needs are here. So I'd like that opportunity. I really appreciate your understanding that we're moving as quick as we can.
Mine's luckily a fun one, and technically not for our agenda, at least it wouldn't be immediately, but I had a wonderful member of our community bring to my attention that the fountain is over 40 years old. Of course, I knew this, but I did not realize that it was qualified to become to obtain a state historic designation. This would be something that I would hope our community would get really excited about. Our fountain park has such obvious strong ties to the origin of our town and our history, and so I would very much love and I have that contact and some of that information as well to help get it going and get it started, but I would love for our historic, I looked it up so I wouldn't mess up the name, Historic and Cultural Advisory Commission to take a look at that and hopefully bring it back to us at a later date.
Madam Mayor, and I have a motion, but does that include Nessie?
Yes, Nessie is included in that designation.
So I do want to make a motion with the passing of American hero Phil Yen. I think we should do a tribute to him in town. It could be as simple as renaming the path around the park, but I think we should do a tribute to him. But I want to give it appropriate time to discuss it, make sure it's right, and make sure that it is fitting for such an American hero.
Good idea. Trying to figure out if that's like a talk to.
Well, I wonder if we do a non-action item when we have time to discuss this, throw out ideas, the staff work on it, and then we'll come up with specifics. Does that sound
yeah,
workable?
I mean, you bet. We can do something for sure.
I was going to say at the appropriate time, you might want to check with his wife, Debbie, too.
Oh, yeah, and again, maybe we'll talk before an actual meeting, because I mean, we could do like a resolution at a meeting, but as far as how you want it to look or something, I think we can definitely do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's worthy of a discussion. That doesn't take really long, but I think we need to really make sure it's right.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else? Any other items? Hold on one sec. Not that I've been looking the whole time. Oh, we're actually winning. We really were losing. So 92-87. Go Suns. We're adjourned.